That turns you on.
Hi, how are you?
All right, I'd like to call the February meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Paul, would you call the roll?
Alan Brown.
Present.
Ayla Frank Clements.
Present.
Suzanne Broadbent. Taylor Fudge. George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Klaus Ryman Phillip.
Present.
Linda Schultz.
Present.
Dan Zachary.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Great. And some new people. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to go over the meeting process, which is on the back of the cover page for the agenda. The chairman will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will discuss details of the case, calling on staff for details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. And 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. Contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to review items that will not be completed. And finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. Okay. So on to number 2 from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer. Katie?
Just wanted to welcome our 2 new commission members, Linda Schultz and Taylor Futch, that just joined us this month for the first time.
Welcome.
Taylor is from Crown Heights and Linda is from Heritage Hills, so happy to have you all aboard. I did want to say that, to remind everyone, we did pass resolutions for our previous 2 members that left several months ago, so I didn't want you to think they just vanished into thin air. We appreciated their service as well. And one other note that we did not get on your agenda, but we'll get some information out to you soon, is that the Statewide Historic Preservation Conference this year is going to be a little earlier than it has been in the past, and it's going to be in combination with the Oklahoma Historical Society Conference. So some changes this year to the format of that, but we'll get information out to the commission about attending. That's all.
Okay. So our schedule for meetings won't be affected this year?
Schedule for meetings will not be affected this time.
Good. Okay. All right. Yeah, welcome new members, and also there's been some shuffling around too, so I have to get used to where everybody's sitting. Okay, on to 3, acceptance of the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes, or is there a motion for approval?
I move to accept the minutes from the January 2nd, 2019 hearing.
Okay.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excuse me?
Do I need to abstain from that?
Because you weren't present?
That would be fine
Okay.
if you did that.
All right. So, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. With, I guess, 2 abstentions. Okay, minutes have been approved. On to the item 4, code enforcement report. Anybody from code enforcement here? Katie, do you have any comments?
Just a reminder, as always, that you can follow up with staff or with code enforcement, HP staff or code enforcement staff on any specific questions that you have. If you see a number in the citation number column, that means that it's progressed from a notice of violation to an actual citation or a ticket, and you can use that number to contact the Action Center and find out more information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, continuous announcements requests, looks like none.
We have 1 new request that came in this morning for HPCA 18-00202 to be continued to April 3rd. That's item D5 on the agenda.
Okay.
So we need a motion and a vote to continue that.
Okay, anybody would like to make
I move to continue HPCA 18-00202 to April 3rd.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, item D5 is continued. And on to public hearings. No dilapidated structures, no National Register nominations.
We have 2 items on the consent docket. Can answer questions about either of those or pull either of those if they need to be considered individually.
Anybody like to consider them individually? Or is there a motion for approval of the consent docket?
Move to approve.
We should probably make sure there's no one in the audience that wanted to be heard on those.
On the consent docket items, anybody? Okay. All right, I think it's been moved and Claus seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent docket is approved. So if you're on that, one of those consent docket items, you've been approved, you can leave or stay around and watch the action. Okay, on to D, individual consideration. Katie?
HPCA 18-00153 at 126 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Daniel Ojeda for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage required, 2, replace and widen driveway elective, 3, replace front walkway and stairs elective, and 5, construct garage with concrete foundation elective. And I will just note that if the applicants want to come forward, that this application and the one immediately after it are for neighboring properties, and it's for demolition and new construction of a shared garage between the two properties. So we can kind of discuss the two cases together, and then we'll have to take separate action on the two applications.
Okay, so D1 and D2 are related. All right, the applicants are present. Can we do that, two at once?
Each one.
We can discuss two at once, okay. All right,
But the vote has to be separate.
yep, of course. All right.
So I'm Daniel, head of 126 Northwest 19th, and this is my neighbor Sean Franz. I'm lucky enough to have an architect for a neighbor, so he did all the plans, and so he's going to do most of the talking. So.
How's it going?
Demolish garage.
So if I remember right, last time we heard from you guys, you were just requesting to demolish it and widen the walkways and replace the walkways, but there was not included in the application constructing a garage. Is that right?
Yeah, we originally we just applied for the driveway. We didn't intend to apply for rebuilding the garage initially. So on this one we added the elevations, kind of the actual floor plans of the new garage that we
Is
proposed.
the microphone working very well? I can hear Sean very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it is, okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we were just trying to widen the driveway, replace some of the sidewalks, and just kind of update it, and actually be able to use our driveway.
Have you had an opportunity to read the comments from the Preservation Committee?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Do you have any response to that?
Do you have in particular a question?
I just wondered if, based on that, were there any changes that you were wanting to make to your application?
No, not at this time.
I think there was a lot of discussion last time on this case about the garage being demolished without approval, and how can we approve something that we didn't have a chance to look at to see if it was indeed beyond repair or imminent danger to the public health. I don't know where we landed on that. If we can still approve a new garage, because clearly there's not one there, we'd like one back, but can we still approve a new one and deny demolishing the demolition of the old one?
We did provide some old photos, kind of showing the condition of the old garage.
Somebody wants to.
Can you help me with the garage door?
Somebody said Mr. Chairman in the audience.
Is it metal?
It was.
It'd be wood clad.
And is it going to be unpainted?
Is it Debbie?
No, it'd be painted.
It'll be painted?
So we're not sure what color it would be yet. So
So, okay. The configuration really doesn't match what we usually approve for bungalows. Are we approving a different? Usually we have, just the simple, and it seems like that with this particular garage design, that it should even be, less. To me, the garage doors that are presented, even if they're finished, they just look more like something that would be more like a barn door or something. So,
I was just trying to match the existing. We had some existing kind of carriage doors on there that were.
do you have photos of those?
Yes, I believe we provided some photos of that initially. I'm not sure if they have them up there.
I think page 4 of 20 in the staff report attachments, you can kind of see the doors. We don't have a great shot of them. It didn't print off great. They were pretty simple, just solid wood doors that I think slid one over the other.
Yeah.
One slid and one opened up.
Uh-huh.
More like a shed.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially just a stable. You couldn't fit a car or anything in there.
Was there somebody in the audience that wanted to speak? Oh, Debbie? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I wanted to say about this, I was
Debbie-
coming down for
Debbie,
20...
Could you state your name?
Yes.
And
Debbie
sign in?
Blackburn,
And sign in also.
and I've signed in here.
Yeah, name and address. Go ahead.
I was originally coming for something that you continued, which was the property on 22nd Street. However, I was asked by the neighborhood to comment also on this and also a sign thing on Northwest 15th Street. The former neighborhood president lives across the street from this and informed, this is a point of information he asked me to portray on this particular property, went across the street and told the property owner that you could not just tear down a garage without a permit. They went ahead and did it both times. And the one concern that the neighborhood has about this is that, yeah, we'd like to see something put back there, but this can continue with tearing down and then asking for forgiveness after the fact if there isn't some penalty. And you don't demolish a structure without a demolition permit anyway, even if it's not in an HP district. It's my understanding that the demolition company did not get a permit on this. And the request is, so that we don't have more of these tear down and then ask for forgiveness, that there be some discussion or at least awareness on the part of the HP Commission that something needs to be done to have teeth in it to go after this demolition company for not obtaining a permit, which they were required to do by city law, on this particular property. And that I'm just here, I really came for the 22nd property, but I'm also talking for the rest of the neighborhood. And this is one issue that we are very concerned about, is just tear down and ask for forgiveness. If we could consider or discuss the fact that there needs to be a penalty to at least to the demolition company for destroying a property without a permit, which you have to have even if you're not in an HP. That, Mr. Chairman, is all that I wanted to convey on this particular issue.
Okay, that's a good point that we discuss quite often. Thank you.
Katie, could you just kind of summarize what our discussion was on that last time? Because we did question that.
As I recall, the last time we met, we did talk through some of kind of what happens if it doesn't get approved at this point, that they would, if they can't get a certificate of appropriateness, it would continue through the code enforcement side of things with our code enforcement officers and proceed to a citation, which would end up with a court date. I have not seen a citation like this where the work's already occurred and there's really not a way to correct it, go to court, so I don't know what the outcome of that would be, but it would be in municipal counselor's office's hands and the court's hands to evaluate what to do with that. We've also talked about that it doesn't seem like we really could authorize new construction if we haven't already approved the demolition, so they do need to happen hand in hand. They brought information to the meeting the last time, and I believe that's included in the staff report from a contractor that looked at the condition of the garage. I know that's not the same thing as the commission being able to evaluate photos and that sort of thing prior to the demolition, but that's what we have before us now to consider.
Katie, could you...
And I do want to say that we had a workshop several months ago where we talked about a number of things with the municipal counselor's office, and one of them was the way enforcement works, particularly with work that's already occurred that really cannot be remedied. We don't have a grand solution, but kind of talked through all of their procedures that we don't always see on our end of reviewing cases. So, I think there are things that the commission can explore, and there are things that the public can explore as far as how do we better work with code enforcement, work with property owners to educate people, that sort of thing.
Katie, could you clarify for me on your specific findings as we were hearing this as if it had not occurred for demolishing the garage, number 2 and 4? 2, we have that the garage is not in such a condition that it poses an imminent threat to public health and safety. And then number 4, that it may be physically impractical to rehabilitate the structure while retaining significant portions of it. I'm not questioning, I just appreciate the thought process.
Yes,
on that.
so we have demolition criteria that apply to all structures, and those are essentially those first 3 there, or well, the first 2, whether the structure is historic, because if it was not historic anyway, we would be less concerned about demolition. And then for all structures, we look at, does it pose an imminent threat to public health and safety that can only be alleviated through demolition? We have separate criteria that are specific to accessory buildings, because we know these have not always been maintained to the same level of care as your primary structures. They were not always built at the same quality as the primary structures. We also address within those criteria the functionality of them, that sometimes we see an accessory building that cannot hold a vehicle, and have kind of acknowledged that that is a viable need for property owners, and that while a building may not be an imminent threat to public health and safety, the condition of the building, the very method in which it was built, may make it very challenging or very difficult to repair it and to keep it in repair. Sometimes we have garages that really have no foundation. There are no it's sitting on dirt, that kind of thing. And that's not to say it's an imminent threat to public health and safety, or that it's not ultimately not repairable, but just kind of setting a different threshold for accessory buildings versus the primary structure.
As we progress through the discussion about this applications, what is the logistics of if one owner is 6 months behind on building their part?
I do not believe they will be able to get a building permit for one part and not the other.
That's what I don't.
I think they're going to have a good road ahead of them with getting a building permit for something that spans the property line. In general, they may end up having to go for a variance, and we may well see them back here in the future to address issues they have on the permitting side of things. But if this were to get approved, their plan review is not going to let them get a permit to build half a building.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah.
Katie, can I ask you a question? Is there some reason that since the garage is gone, and we don't, in fact, have any documentation really on that garage, is there some reason that a new garage wouldn't need to fit the guidelines and standards just that we already have? In other words, this one really doesn't. So, I mean, if you're starting from scratch, wouldn't you have to fit the guidelines and standards? Wouldn't it have to be a bungalow garage? Wouldn't it have to have an offset from the property line? I mean, aren't we starting from zero here?
Well, we're starting from, I think what the applicant was intending to do was to approximate the previously existing garage as closely as possible. We see garage designs that are kind of the typical design that we often see when the garage is long gone and we don't know what it looked like. That's what a lot of people will come forward and propose, kind of what you're describing. But we do know what the garage looked like before, and so even if what was there before was not the typical historic garage that's the most prevalent throughout the neighborhood, the kind of first line of response is that you try to go back with something that approximates the previously existing garage. So I think they've attempted to do that. There are some things about it that are different. The footprint is a little different. The configuration of the doors is different. But that's what they were attempting to do with the shared garage structure.
Because I thought what we were attempting to do was bring things into compliance over a period of time in the historic districts. So if I tore down something that's non-compliant, that we wouldn't expect that I build back something that's non-compliant, that I would start, that part of our progress is bringing things into compliance. I guess that's,
This one was in compliance because it was historic.
what does that mean? How,
It means it was original to the, it was the original garage. So it really doesn't, I mean, the design of the original garage is historic. If it was built, you know, if it's been there this entire time.
has it been there?
I mean,
Okay.
that's what they're
Okay.
thinking. I mean, and it's in the same footprint as the Sanborn map, so.
So it was built
Even though
when
it's
the house
not,
was built?
maybe what you would, like Katie said, maybe it's not the design that we generally see, but
Okay.
Yeah.
not to say, I mean, I think that they could have had a choice. They could have come back with something different, perhaps, but I think they're trying to go with what the original was because that's what they tore down. I still have a question about the doors. Since we can't clearly see them in the photograph, I'm still, the design of this door is, but you think that's what it looked like?
I mean, and the whole intention of the elevations was to show that we are planning to build a new garage. Initially, we're just wanting to build a driveway and kind of a reinforced pad that
Right.
we can actually use initially, and then maybe here in a year or so, we'll come back with a refined garage design, kind of to the same parameters that we present today, but maybe a little bit more a little bit more developed.
So you're saying that you're not going to build this garage?
Not initially. Initially, we're going to build the driveway, and then maybe, you know, a year or so from now, we're going to build the garage. We're not building the garage, you know.
I have a concern about that, and the neighborhood suggested that because you did not get a permit to tear down the garage, that you'd be limited to only put back a pad that was equal to the size of the one that you tore down.
And that's the reason why we showed the plans of the garage that we, you know, plan to build, showing that we are.
So is this the exact floor plan that was there?
No, it's bigger just to make it fit an actual car, just because the older plans
So
couldn't
I've got a
fit.
comment on that. What I can see is one garage is 10 feet wide, 20 feet long. The other one's 15 by 20 feet long. Neither one of those fit two cars. That's one of the criteria that allows demolition if it doesn't keep two cars in it. So that, to me, right there, says that they should be able to do something with that.
I'm
So-
kind of in agreement with that, but generally we're talking to somebody that has full intent of building the garage.
And we do.
Once again, we're in a situation where we cannot do anything. If they don't build the garage in a year, we're back to we couldn't do anything when they tore the garages down. So it just seems, that seems difficult for me.
To approve without...
It seems difficult to approve with,
I mean, our main intention is to be able to use our driveway. Right now, I can't even pull my car up because it's so high and my car's too low, and I haven't been able to even use my driveway.
Right. I understand that, and I think that if you would have come in when the garage was still there and we discussed that, then maybe we would
For sure.
be at a different point, but
We
anyway, that's-
you know, we were misled by
kinda-
our contractor. You know,
We've got another member of the public that would like to speak.
Let me say, as she's approaching the podium, let me just say that I think we have lots of applicants that come before us and ask to tear down a garage, and they present a new garage, and they don't necessarily have any intention of building it, at least not for a certain length of time. So I understand the concern about that, but I think we have that happen frequently, that their goal is to get a garage torn down.
I agree.
Yes, they plan to build it back at some point, but that's not necessarily something they're going to immediately do.
They come back asking to demolish the garage.
What?
They come back in asking to demolish a garage that's existing, and we look at the whole project at that point. But if they don't build it, I mean, I don't see that many people come back in and ask for a continuance at the end of the year that they haven't built their garage. I mean, maybe they do. But do we get those, or is it just something staff would see?
If it is the first extension for 6 months, staff can approve, so those don't come to you guys.
If somebody submits a CA, something like that, they don't always have to do everything on there. Is that correct? There's some things are required and...
Right, so we label things on the CAs and on their application packets as required. which means that it is work that is directly in response to a citation or a notice of violation, and it's kind of our code to the inspectors that if that work wasn't completed when they go out to inspect the CA, then they need to route that back through code enforcement, that violation is still outstanding. We also label things as elective, so when a property owner comes in and says, I think I'd like to change out my porch columns, if they don't ever move forward with that project, it gets approved, but they decide not to do it, we're not going to require that. It's not going to be enforced.
Yeah.
So you'll see on here that the demolition is coded as required to kind of note that that is in response to a code enforcement issue. Everything else that they're proposing to do that has not yet been initiated is listed as elective.
So the new garage would be elective?
Yep.
So there's no...
We have no mechanism to force somebody
Right.
to construct
That's what I
something.
was getting
Yep.
to.
Yeah.
All right, so I think Marva wanted to speak to this.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. I'm not going to argue with Katie, but I can tell you that almost everybody in Heritage Hills that gets a permit to build a garage is building garages. We don't have pseudo garage/parking pads. And so I think it would be more accurate if the applicant wanted to apply for a parking pad instead of apply for a garage whose CA is going to expire before they have any intent of building a garage. And so I think the neighborhood needs the opportunity to review, just like you all need the opportunity to consider an actual circumstance and not a circumstance that may or may not come to pass. And so I would ask the applicants to amend their application to put parking pad instead of garage on it, if that is what they intend to do, and let people evaluate actual versus possible.
So let me clarify that the first time they came before the commission, that is what they proposed. They proposed to replace the driveway and put a parking pad in the approximate location of the garage. And the commission specifically asked them to come back with a proposal to build a garage showing that the parking pad would function as a foundation for that future garage. In that meeting, there was discussion that we know you might not build the garage right away. So I think the applicants went away in good faith, following up on that guidance from the commission.
And I agree with your recollection of the facts. I think what is different is they're saying that they probably won't build it in the applicable time period, because he said maybe a year and a half. CA's expired by then. And he also said that they were a victim of their contractor, and we know that that's not accurate. Randy Ice talked to them when they had a bulldozer or whatever it was sitting there. So I don't know that this needs to be a punitive situation, but I think it needs to be based on accuracy. And if they're going to say they're going to build a garage in a year, then I guess we have to look at it that way. But if we submit a CA to build a house and we get our final inspection before we get a certificate of occupancy, I promise you that inspector is very detailed about what they look at when they come out. And so I don't think this garage can be a kind of thing. It needs to be either they're going to build it or they're not. And so if they're not going to build it, but they're going to get a parking pad by saying they're going to build it, I think they should at least say they want a parking pad, and then you can affirm or deny based on accurate information.
So the last meeting, we said to come back with a parking pad that could serve as foundation as for a future garage. Is that what we said?
Yes.
We didn't initially say, come back, show us a garage.
The direction was to come back with a proposal for a garage showing the foundation of the garage, and that foundation, that the concrete that was poured, would support a garage. And there, as I recall, when I watched the meeting not too long ago, the recording of the meeting, because the applicant wanted to make sure they'd provided everything they needed, there was discussion at the meeting that there was an understanding that building a new garage was not part of their plan when all of this initially occurred, that they had every intention of doing it eventually, but that right now they were trying to get the demolition addressed, the paving addressed, and that ultimately they would try to move forward with the garage.
Okay, so if you, following up on that, if you build this foundation for the future garage, but nothing above the foundation right now, you'll basically have a foundation, a stem wall,
Yeah.
and the floor of the garage. So you'll see the stem wall.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm
And
aware
you'll
of that.
probably see reinforcement sticking
No, yeah,
out.
I'm aware of that. And like I said, we fully intend to build a new garage, I mean, probably later this year, whenever the time may be.
Yeah.
That's the...
Because a foundation for a garage is not just a flat slab.
No, I understand that. There's a stem wall, and my details
sloping
my
floor.
details show that I'm fully aware of that.
So, I don't know if
And,
that
and
makes
we
a
just
difference, but-
another reason is we have a lot of drainage issues on that back pad in our driveway, kind of funneling into both houses. And hopefully the new, we're trying to resolve some of those issues with the new driveway and kind of take care of those drainage issues.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a good time to do it.
And we have full intention of building a garage. I mean, this is where we live. It's not like we're just trying to, get away with one or something like that. It's just a mistake on our part, and I feel like we've come forward and, kind of paid our dues in the sense that, we're not trying to hide anything or get away with anything. And I feel like there's a lot of people trying to accuse us of things and that kind of stuff. But we have full intention of building a new garage. So,
Mr. Fromm, what is it that makes you think this garage is going to be approved by the city under other building ordinances?
I've talked to them briefly, and they said that we could get a variance where the garage is actually on the property line. It actually splits it, just because that's how it was originally and historically. And they kind of they were kind of giving me kind of a ping pong effect, kind of sending me back to the historical preservation and then kind of going back to the city. And I never really got a definite answer on if they would actually approve it or not. But
It looks to me like you've got a double structural wall on the property line.
yeah,
So each one is structurally independent, could be.
exactly,
And since it's on the property line, you just have to be a firewall.
exactly.
So I don't see why it's even a zoning question.
Setback.
Or, a variance issue, but
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. They never really gave me a definite answer. So I felt they were kind of dependent on if we did get a certificate of appropriateness approved, that they would probably more than likely.
so each side is structurally independent.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to go back to the garages that were existing, didn't meet the requirements for a modern two-car garage. So we probably would have approved it, because the issue here is, will we approve a foundation that isn't just a pad, it's a foundation design without the garage being built?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we don't get applicants that come in and say, well, here's a proposal for something I might build someday.
Yeah.
And I understand you're not saying that, but it's kind of gone back and forth. So I don't think we can
We have no
approve
reassurance.
a pad with a stem wall
Yeah.
without the structure there.
And even if you approved it and you did build it a year later, the CA's already expired at that point anyways, so it wouldn't make any sense almost to.
So I'm kind of, what do we do then? You told us one thing, and now we've.
I will say, I think the drive is a totally separate issue from the garage.
Well, we were told separate. We were told
so-
that different last time. They were told it was the same thing.
That what?
So that
The
it was the same
drive was
the same issue, because we came to you kind of showing a new driveway / a new pad, and then you guys requested showing elevation and kind of the actual garage design. So I'm kind of confused on.
So would we approve a new driveway leading up to a future?
See, this is a whole difficult part, I guess, with, the situation we're in with a existing garage, where I think if it was an existing garage, maybe you hadn't planned on demoing it right now, and you'd come to us and said, I want to install a new drive that is a wider, and, I think that would have probably been pretty straightforward. I think the difficulty is, now we're looking at, essentially a parking pad like we're talking about, or a foundation for a garage that we don't have any reinsurance is going to get built. So
We could maybe look at the driveway up to the back of the house, which is the problem, because you a single lane. So basically widen it, and then at the back where it flares out to the new garage, do that when you do the garage. In other words, do it to right here.
And I do recognize that it's probably a drainage and an access issue and doesn't look very usable right now. So there isn't a it's not practical as it is.
So to get a double wide driveway and do the rest later maybe.
So we do have the driveway as a separate item on the applications. We have to replace and widen the driveway. So the commission can certainly approve the driveway as a standalone feature.
I guess my point was you wouldn't want to prove it all the way back to the garage where it flares out.
Right.
To,
And so an approval for a garage is just that. It's an approval for a garage. It's not an approval for a concrete foundation with a stem wall. They have 1 year to complete the CA, so I think at the point that that year was up, we would evaluate, are they going to move forward with a garage, and do they need an extension to complete that? Have they not yet poured a foundation, and we're going to leave it with that work is not going to be completed, and it's just going to be the driveway? Or is there a foundation there with no garage, and we need to maybe come back to the commission to address the design issues that come from that and what's appropriate. Nothing here would give them a CA to, the CA is for a garage. So I don't know if that helps anybody with their comfort level.
Well, yeah, so I could support replace or widening the driveways to a point and the front walkway and the sidewalk, and not 1 and 5. I guess. Right?
Katie, what page is the driveway width on? Sorry, I can't find it.
If I could just ask, if we're approving the driveway and then we talk about the pad, stem wall, wouldn't that all be in conjunction with a garage? If we're approving that, it means we're approving the garage also?
Yes.
And it seems to be the applicant's purview whether they can get it done in a year. I don't know.
Say that last part.
It seems unfair to them that we're not approving a garage because they may not be able to build it in a year. That's never happened in my experience.
Yeah.
That someone's upfront enough to say, this may not happen.
Yeah.
But we just happen to know some information that many times we would not have known. That's all I'm saying.
If they hadn't said they weren't maybe not going to build it,
Right.
we wouldn't be talking right now.
Right.
We're going to end up with a patio.
Trying to be honest. I feel like we got in trouble initially, so I'm trying to be
It's all
upfront.
like kind of nonsensical. We're going in a circle here. And I can support the driveway and the sidewalks. And maybe look at the garage as a garage application.
Would you let them build a driveway all the way back to the future garage as shown on their site plan? Because it flares out. There's the garage that does that. I was saying maybe go to here.
Well, I think we talked about the pad being a standard size that we would approve anyway. For a garage in that location.
Well, I know, but if there's no garage here, it would look kind of weird for the driveway.
It'd be a parking pad.
It'd be a parking pad, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one, and I'm inclined to say, this whole effort didn't start off on good faith necessarily. If you were to build a foundation with a stem wall, I would assume that you would be inclined to finish a garage on that. And it seems kind of counterintuitive to maybe not approve a garage that we might otherwise approve. If you might, we almost, to a degree, have to take you a good faith. If you build part of it, maybe if it's not done in a year, you get, 6-month extension to finish it. But I feel like I don't know if it gets us anywhere to not approve it. I don't know what happens then.
Not quite clear.
For example, with the demolition, if they came back like a year from now with a new garage design or maybe the same garage design, you still have the same kind of concerns potentially. Maybe they're, they vocalize that they're ready to build it, right away, but there's no evidence then either of that.
Another concern might be that your design depends on both parties. You have two owners that are going together. Wonder if something happens and one owner is not there in, the near future. Then you have to get a new, so it's not just even one person. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a
I mean, if we allow them to go ahead with the foundation.
two-owner thing. I mean, I understand what you're saying too, but, I mean, that kind of also kind of comes into play to some extent. Could.
Could there be a condition if the garage is built that it has to be in conjunction with the parking pad and stem wall? Because I think a parking pad with a stem wall would be awkward in a backyard myself.
Well, yeah, I don't think it'd look,
Trip over it or ride
Right.
with me.
yeah,
Drive over it.
wouldn't look like just a slab.
Could that be a condition that they be done in conjunction with each other?
Or, do you have any comments at this point?
I mean,
So
If we-
I
if we
think
approve
to,
the-
well, to George's, I think, nothing, well, a couple of things. If this was a house that didn't have a garage, the garage burned down 20 years ago, and they came in and said, we have a driveway, we have no garage, we would administratively approve replacing their driveway in the bat of an eye. That would never even come to this commission. Staff would just sign off on that because we let people replace their driveways when they have one. So to allow them to replace a driveway back to where a garage once was, I think is something that is not a controversial issue for this body ordinarily.
Except they're widening it.
Yeah.
They are, but they're still below what we would administratively approve the widening for
Really?
the most part because it's narrower than what our guidelines allow. Maybe not the part where it fans out to the width of
That's-
the
yeah.
garage doors, but as far as the
Future
width
garage.
down the side of the
Yeah.
house.
Well, I would say that would be something we could approve as a driveway to some point.
I could add on
You
the
could use that for
driveway.
parking.
I mean, we would need to fit 4 cars in the back, or else the driveway doesn't do anything for us. If you drive up and down a lot of those streets in Heritage Hills East, it looks like there's a party going on every day because cars are parked up and down the street.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And so the goal here is, can we get
Yeah.
him and his wife's car and mine, my wife,
I think we're
car
kind
back
of
there?
leaning towards driveway, just how far, and if we want to improve the flare out in the back, that'd be a parking area. Be kind of weird with no garage there, but
I think
so it would be
Joe,
a stem wall.
Joe has an excellent point. I mean, what happens if one owner sells in 10 months? How does that affect all this?
We deal with shared driveways all the time with, and
Oh, yeah,
there-
but it's on
there
the
are-
garage.
But on the garage, I think there's a process to come back and amend the CA, and it would come back before the commission. If one house sold and the new owner said, I don't want a shared garage, I don't want to do that, I'm not going to build that, it would come back to this body for
To do one of the
yeah,
one-home
for a
garage.
different.
You
But
could
it would have
build,
a foundation and a stem wall. I mean,
you could build one half of that garage if it was structurally independent. You don't have to build both halves.
right.
You just have to have a firewall, like I said. You could,
But it's all going to be on one foundation. It's all going to be on one foundation.
wouldn't have to be. Could
But
be
it's
separate.
not
Could be.
in this plan.
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying if it happened that somebody sold the property and their guy didn't want the garage, you could build one half of it as drawn.
Yeah, we just don't want like an awkward foot or two in the middle. We're just trying to maximize our space.
Yeah, and that's and the historic garage, which went to the property line also, that makes a difference. Or they could choose, the new owner could choose to set it back. It would have to be 5 feet to meet fire separation, but anyhow, it's possible to do that.
And I'll just add, I mean, we both bought our house within the last couple of years. We bought here because we think it's a good investment and we love the area. We're going to continue to invest in our house, make it look better. And we have every intention of building a garage. And hopefully, in a few years, our street and our houses look 10 times better than it does now. But if we can't get a new driveway and a new parking pad for a garage, it's just always going to look like the edge of the neighborhood. I mean,
Yeah.
we really want to do our best to improve it.
Well, does somebody want to take a stab at something on the driveway and other items? Driveways. I guess we have two separate, do them separately, right?
We need to demolish the garage first, right?
We would need a motion for that. That's what's gone. And like I said, neither one of the historic looked like it met the requirement for being able to park 2 cars. They were too narrow.
That's not the only
That's not the only
caveat.
but that's one.
And I'm inclined to deny, with prejudice, the demolition of the garage for a number of reasons. I don't know if anybody wants to move approval. That might be the only nay. But in the recommended specific findings, we have the garage is historic, contributes to the character of the property and district. It is not in such a condition that it poses an imminent threat to public health and safety. That can only be alleviated through demolition. The structure is large enough to accommodate two standard parking spaces.
They weren't.
Okay.
That one, that's
Mark
what
that one
I'm
out.
saying was not, does not apply.
The structure appears to be original to the property, and it is visible from the public right-of-way and appears to retain its historic integrity. For those reasons, I wouldn't, if the garage were there now, which we have to pretend that it is, I would not approve demolition. So,
Conversely, though, if somebody came in and wanted to demolish a garage, if it didn't meet the requirement for parking, isn't that one of the reasons we use for?
we can consider that,
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily something, oh, this is only
not a
15
given.
by 10, then absolutely you can demo your garage, but it's something that we can consider.
Right.
I will say, and I know that we didn't have a full structural report, we didn't have, the kind of information, but, for example, if you look at page 5 of 20 of the staff report,
5?
it looks pretty dilapidated, and I think we've definitely, not that we should consider past cases, but we've approved demolition of,
There were giant holes in the back of it. The roof leaked. We had mud and stuff in the floor just with so much
I
water and
understand
stuff.
that. You can see a few things in the picture, but I would never feel comfortable making an assessment of the garage just from this little picture.
And I'm not comfortable with that either.
I'd go so far as to say it was an imminent threat to the public, too. When my niece and nephew came over, I told them, do not go near the garage. It was
Do you have
nails, it was bad.
Do you have more documentation of the garage before it was demolished that shows the other sides and any structural problems?
As of now, no, but we can maybe reach out to the previous owner and see if maybe she had some photos documenting it. But
That might be helpful for...
as of right now, we do not really have anything that kind of shows.
I think it's fair to the commission, to the neighbors, to the historic districts, with all of our cases, that we have complete documentation so that we can make an informed decision. So that's why I'm struggling here.
I understand that, and we came day one, once the mistake was made, we came right to you guys and told you what we did, and that kind of stuff. So I just feel like, what else can we really do at this point?
Since it doesn't look like we're going to approve a new garage, and we're not going to approve a foundation either, we really don't have to approve the demolition. We could continue it for them to provide more information, but we could approve the driveways separately, could we not?
Even continuing it, that's not saying that what you bring to us is we're going to find that as full documentation or fully acceptable for us to make a decision.
I don't think
in
we're
your
going to find
favor.
anything else than what we've already provided.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think we can keep coming back every single month, and the street's going to look horrible, driveway's going to look horrible, until you guys let us
we can
invest in our
consider the
house.
driveway separately.
This application is out of continuances.
Oh.
This is the third time it's been before the commission, and we can only hear it 3 times. You do have, in addition to the photos, you do have a write-up from a contractor on an estimate to do work to the garage. I know that's not the same as something from a structural engineer, and it's certainly not the same as being able to see the garage before it had come down. But you were asking what else they had provided, and that is in your packets.
I did see that.
The whole
We haven't
structure
been
is
there.
leaning to the east and cannot be straightened to the upright position. That's about the size of it.
So what would be our next step then? If you guys don't approve the garage, are we just not allowed to ever have the garage on our property? Is that kind of...
No, I think you have to, what Neil is saying, and maybe we might approve the demolition based on the fact that it doesn't fit 2 cars, if somebody wanted to make that motion.
And that was my take on this. So other commissioners may feel differently. So if someone were to move approval, you may get your majority.
Based on that, it looks like the only one that applies. Or maybe there's sentiment to provide more documentation.
Well, yeah, one comment that I saw on the demolition, that it may be physically impractical to rehabilitate the structure while retaining significant portions of the original fabric. It seems like if you were to rehabilitate it, especially in the photo where you're missing large chunks of siding, I'm not sure. And again, I mean, we don't have perfect documentation, but, you know, you might end up replacing over 50% of the garage anyway, trying to rehabilitate it.
Looks like there's two schools of thought.
Practically speaking, the garage is gone at this point, and the house needs a garage. You know, I don't like the fact that it's a historic structure that is no longer there, but I think going forward, I think they do need a garage, and they've done sounds like they've done what the commission's asked, coming back with new plans to put the garage back together in a manner with which is somewhat consistent with what it appeared to look like before. So I guess, well, we can't go back and change, not to demolish the garage, but I guess my thought is the house needs a garage going forward.
I think the big picture is we want to have owners enhance their properties, and the big picture is to have a nice garage back there in the future. No matter what they bring back as far as they get past owners' photos of this thing, it's not there to talk about. It's already gone. So it makes it very difficult.
It is, and I hear what you're saying, but we also have to look at how many times this has happened and continues to occur, and people now think, well, I can just do what I want and come and ask for forgiveness. And I am not saying, I don't mean to insinuate that, but we hear that from neighbors that are upset about that, and I understand that as well.
Maybe there's another issue that we could recommend to City Council or whatever it is. Rita, maybe that's in your purview of how we would make recommendations on fines or something to make it less palatable to tear down a garage without approval.
Let's add it to our workshop list.
I would think.
Okay. One, not to convolute everything, but one final thought is, the applicants have offered information, where they've mentioned that, they have intention of building a new garage. They're not sure when exactly that's going to be. And I do feel, they have a plan, something that basically approximates what they had. And, other applicants, like you said, they don't necessarily divulge that information. They say, here's a garage plan, we prove it. And I think 9 times out of 10, they probably build it. There might be a period where they don't. And Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you were kind of insinuating that, we could approve it, but then it's going to be reviewed anyway by the, by the officer or the inspector, right?
Right. I mean, they'll have a CA for a garage, and when that CA expires, an inspector's going to go out to validate that the work that was done, either no work was done or that it matches the CA. And if they have a foundation and no garage, or if they have half a garage, or whatever the case may be, there will be another line of communication with them on the status of that project. This doesn't give them permission to just build a standalone parking slab and never finish that project.
Then I have a question. Then is the information provided in regards to the design of the garage adequate for review? Because it seems like it's...
I think they were recommending additional information.
We did get some additional materials in from the applicant that that addressed, I think, the siding materials, the garage door material. I know some commission members had questions about whether the garage door design was appropriate, but that's something that we can address with the applicant if everything else is sufficient. There's pedestrian door is included. Really, for a garage, that's pretty much all we needed on the materials. We've got a detail for the foundation. We've got our elevation drawings. So
but I think
if people had specific concerns about design elements of the garage door and the pedestrian door, those are things that can be addressed. But I think we checked all the boxes on what they need for a garage design.
Well, it seems like we've got several possible motions. One is to approve the driveway and all the other stuff. Somebody wants to do that. One, to approve demolition of the garage based on the fact that it can't fit 2 cars in both sides. Or Neela's, which was, because there's no more continuances, deny with prejudice based on lack of the factors that she cited. So could somebody kind of
Well,
pursue
I'll
one
go
of those?
ahead. I will, unless other commissioners have comments, item 2 and 3 to replace and widen driveway, replace front walkway and stairs.
We're on D1, right?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Case D1, yes. Items 2 and 3, A2 and A3. Does anyone have any other comments on those?
Driveway go all the way back to the planned future garage?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
You can't see that from the street.
Okay.
So I would,
There were some comments from the neighbors.
I know.
On the sidewalks. Are they,
That part has been removed from, well, let me double check, because we had 2 different scenarios. They are now just replacing in kind the front sidewalks. They're not going to remove the postal walk or whatever we were calling those.
Okay.
On the other application that had the same types of walkways, they have, just to clarify while we're talking about it, they have proposed to remove the portion of the sidewalk that goes down the side of their house to their backyard fence, just because that causes some confusion with people thinking they can get back in that way, but they were going to leave the part that runs parallel to the street across the front.
okay.
Is the diagram correct in our packet?
Yes, the site plan's correct in what's been provided.
Oh, excuse me. Another speaker.
When I was reviewing the applications, it looked like Danny was keeping his postal walk, but Mr. Franz was still asking for his to be removed. So could we review that? Because
Our drawing shows it staying on both of them.
that not item 4,
Is that right?
because it looked like you were keeping item 4. But see, you have item 4 on there to remove. You're just talking about the edge. But you're keeping the funny little walk. Okay, that was the question. You don't have a postal walk on there?
Have you guys, okay, do you have a
I'm sorry.
agreement there? Could you tell us what,
Yeah.
what it is you're talking about?
We were just clarifying. We were just clarifying what's getting demoed and what's staying. I was
Okay,
just
could you-
showing her
could you-
on the drawings itself.
Could you clarify, tell us what you just clarified?
Just that, kind of what Katie said earlier, that we're going to demo the portion that leads back into the bedrooms and replace the front postal sidewalk that's parallel to the street, that kind of faces our porch.
The diagram that's in the packet, is that what you're proposing?
I'm sorry?
Yes, the site plans are accurate in both
Yes,
staff
yeah.
reports.
That's accurate. Is there any paving that's being taken out that's postal walk?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Okay. Then my motion, okay, so move to approve HPCA 18-00153, items 2 and 3, according to the specific findings in the staff report. And for item 3, I would also like to include the condition that they provide all the, no, wait, no. Hold on, these are numbered differently. Okay, items 2 and 3 with the specific findings listed in the staff report.
Okay.
That'll do it.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, items 2 and 3 are approved. Progress. Now, we'll deal with the garage, either for or against.
I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00153, item 1, demolish garage, with the specific findings, as though in the staff report, especially that the original garage would not have accommodated cars, in a modern capacity.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, or 2? 3. Against? The ayes? Board.
Taylor, were you aye or nay?
So,
2 to 3.
okay, so 5-3. All right, the demolition's been approved, and now construct garage. No continuances. Sounds like nobody's willing to let them build a foundation.
I would make a motion to allow them to build the foundation. So what?
5?
So you can use the,
Item number 5, yeah.
yep,
Okay, yeah. You can't say foundation.
so it'd be this motion.
So I'd make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00153, item 5, construction garage,
With the understanding that
with the understanding that there's going to be a stem wall to be built.
the garage may or may not happen.
Yes.
Well, I don't think we have to say that. I think we can say
We just approve.
we're approving the garage. And, yeah.
You're just approving it. Okay. So you can't, okay. We just know that because they're honest. Okay, so it's been, is there a second?
I have a question.
Okay.
Is it weird that I would approve item 5 when I denied the demolition of the garage? Because I do want a garage there,
We won't tell anyone.
but I
It'll just be
don't.
posted on the City of Oklahoma City
Right,
website.
right. So, okay.
We're going to tell everybody.
I just had the same question.
I won't tell anybody.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
Did you say? Okay. But you did it very quietly.
It's reasonable.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. You've been, what? Neela. You've been approved.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, HPCA 18-00154 is a repeat of the same proposal at the neighboring property. The only item that is different, as was discussed on the previous case, is that they have item 4 to remove a portion of sidewalk at the edge of the front porch. This is only the portion of the walkway that turns and runs north-south along the side of the house. The remaining portion will stay in place.
Okay. Is it,
What did the neighbors say about that? Was there anything, Katie?
which piece? Sidewalk?
It's on the back.
Oh, on the.
It sounds like as long as they keep the ones in the ones in the front are the postal sidewalks, and that's what they're keeping.
Right.
Okay.
So you're going to demolish the one on the
There's a
east
side sidewalk that
Shown
they
it-
want to remove.
that's shown in a dashed line on their site plan.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think the only comment we had about the sidewalks were from the October review of the application when they were proposing to remove the entire thing.
Okay. So what's shaded will go back in. Okay.
Okay, then I'll move to approve HPCA 18-00154, items 2, 3, and 4, with the specific findings listed in the staff report. And give me a second. The unique circumstances listed for item 4, and that'll do it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 2, 3, and 4 are approved.
Do we have,
Let's do it like we did the last one.
Are we ready for the demolition? Is that next? Mm-hmm. I make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00154, item 1, with the specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Did they recommend?
Rick?
Yep, it's the same, I think, same findings as the other one.
Same findings.
Well, but there was Justification, the unique circumstance, that's not large enough to fit two.
And that's actually in the specific findings. The structure is large enough, that the structure is large enough to accommodate two standard size.
So the structure is large enough, it's
I know,
not
I
large
don't-
enough.
But it wasn't, so I don't, it must apply to this.
So you could,
Written
well,
weird.
The
I
last
think it's that
motion-
it would accommodate one vehicle, but it would not
Okay.
accommodate.
The last motion clause said is not large enough.
Yeah, I know, I'm just reading the staff report. Why does it say,
Well, I'm just saying that that's just the unique circumstance, that we're, the reason why we're approving it.
but they're only applying for a one-car garage?
Two, both sides are 20 feet, or two-car garage.
This one, the existing garage was 15 feet, 8 inches by 20 feet.
Right.
The one that's gone, the new ones will fit two. The
Two
old
cars,
ones.
it's just an 8-foot, am I reading the plan incorrectly? It's an 8-foot door.
Well, I thought it was a 20-foot,
There's two
Each side.
8-foot doors.
well, you make a point. I didn't catch the doors. There are 20 feet wide each, which will fit two cars, but they only show one door.
Well,
Huh.
he's only applying for one half of it.
I know, but each one is wide enough for two cars, but they're only showing one door.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
it's wide enough, 8'9" is wide enough for two cars?
No, the garage itself would be wide enough for two
The
cars.
proposed-
The proposed garage is 20 feet wide.
Right.
But they're
Each
only
half.
showing one garage door, one single width
Right.
garage door.
There's
But
a
I
big-
think on the demolition, the discussion was that the other half of the garage was narrower. It was 10 feet by 20. This one is 15 by 20.
The historic garage was
Garage
not
is
large
fine.
enough. The new one proposed is, but there's only one door shown.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say the
that.
specific findings, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, we're not going to have 3 in there. I don't know why do we have to have that?
Well, you've given no justification to demolish it, but
It still doesn't make sense to me that the structure is large enough. Okay, the structure is not large enough.
yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Shouldn't they submit plans that show a garage that can hold 2 cars?
It can hold 2 cars.
This is-
The
It
new
has
one
one door
cannot.
on it.
Barbara, this is a new case, so we need you to state your
Sorry,
name and sign
Barbara
it.
Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue.
Okay, and sign it, please.
I mean, I was confused on the other one, on the 2, in that the original garages did not appear to be able to hold 2 cars per side. This one is not being built to hold 2 cars per side because there's
Correct.
only a single garage door.
That's correct.
Being built, even though they said that they were being built for 2 cars. I don't
Because they
really-
want to get their wives' car, I mean.
Right, only one car is going to go in the garage.
Correct. I know, I didn't catch that there was only one
Yeah.
door. One
It's only
single
one
door.
car. It's only a one-car garage. So anyway,
Katie, could
I'll
they
wait
be
for
allowed to
public
amend
comments.
that, put adequate door on it to accommodate 2 cars?
They could certainly amend it if they wanted to come back and make that change at any time between now and whenever they do the work.
I mean, they can't use it for a justification if they're saying the structure isn't large enough for 2 cars, and then they build one for 1 car. So I'm saying,
I don't think they offered that
gonna
as a
cross that out.
justification. I think their concern was the condition and that it
Right.
was infeasible to repair.
Well, then,
that is why I said, can't we delete item 3? That the other findings, and then, if you leave that out, then there are no, I mean, then you have to agree that it was not in, that it was in bad condition.
Yeah.
I don't know.
okay.
Y'all are confusing me.
Yeah, because now we have zero justification to approve demolition if all of the specific findings point toward the fact that it could have been saved or it was big enough or whatever.
Justification to demolish it wasn't large enough, but the fact that they're building back one that's large enough, but they're not providing 2 doors. So,
And it's over the
about that?
size limit, right?
what?
It's over the size limit we provide in the
I mean, it would just
guidelines?
be,
No.
by a little bit.
No, it's 440 square feet, it's 20 by 22, right?
I mean, the only one that applies is that it may be physically impractical to rehabilitate while retaining significant portions of the original fabric.
You can add that.
So,
Okay.
so those are the findings with the finding number 4 applying to why. So I'm going to say specific findings 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. I don't know if I understand it, but is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so the same nays?
Yeah.
Who was the second? Ann and Linda.
Mila? Just two? I thought there were,
Ann and Linda and me.
and Linda. Okay, and Linda.
No, who was the second?
The second was Klaus. Yeah, we need to slow down a little bit. Okay, so we voted, and there were
Yeah, what was the vote?
3. Let's, everybody, all the nays, raise your hand.
The nays.
The nays, okay?
Okay.
Everybody else was ayes. Okay, so item 1 is approved.
I would like to make a motion for HPCA 18-00154, item 5. Is that
Okay? Is there a second for
the one
that?
that's left?
Is
Okay.
there a second?
Second.
For that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. George Massey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that one is approved. All right, did they take off?
Yay.
You've been approved. It has been approved.
HPCA 18-00158 at 121 Northwest 22nd Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Trey Shropshire Bryant Construction and Consulting LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct dwelling elective, 2, construct detached garage elective, 3, install driveway elective, and 4, install walkway elective, and 5, install fence elective.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I actually brought some additional information in response.
Okay, could you state your name and sign in, please?
Signed in, I'm Trey Shropshire, the current property owner at 121 Northwest 22nd.
Okay. The throbbing.
Are you submitting additional design?
There's clarifications and specific citations from standards and guidelines showing.
Okay. I think personally today this might be difficult to look at because I know we have people from the neighborhood and they're not going to be able to review it.
Okay.
For me, I mean,
The design hasn't changed. It's just specific citations and clarifications.
okay.
Now, I had a few thoughts on the design as well, and I think we could maybe provide some guidance on, and then allow the neighborhood to respond, or what are you suggesting, Mary Jo?
So I think the applicant is prepared to say a few words about his proposal, and then normally we take questions and comments from the commission and then offer an opportunity for people from the public to speak.
Okay.
Okay. The specific design, which this seems to be where a lot of the sticking point is, based on it's distracting or it does not fit that current streetscape, it's actually pulled exactly from standard and guidelines, page 123, section 462.
Okay.
There's an example in there. I'm just waiting for to hand that out.
Oh, okay.
What is the best way for y'all from this perspective on a new construction? I mean, I can approach it a couple different ways. That was the first point that I wanted to go over because that did seem to be the biggest sticking point.
Yeah, is there a page in this packet that we should,
Yes, there is.
you're referencing?
following the elevations, it's going to be roughly around page 30.
I mean, briefly, I think that we would, perhaps appreciate kind of the overall design idea for the property.
Overall design was to bring something that is new, sustainable, environmental friendly, but still maintain historical characteristics, which is why we referred to that new construction standards and guidelines to reference and find examples that were recommended from historical preservation. So then we searched through the neighborhood to find other examples where it wasn't identical to the previous structure. That street, while similar porches, the west adjoining property has a full stucco exterior veneer. So it's kind of a wide assortment of finishes on that street.
I would agree, but I think that, we always say that we look to the one, we always try to just do one thing at a time. We can consider, people come in and they say, well, across the street or down the street, or we counted 100 or whatever. And sometimes that's applicable, but I think in this case, when we're designing new construction, that the number one thing, and I'm not saying to copy, but the number one thing is actually looking at the properties that are directly on either side of the property so that it's compatible in the streetscape. And so I would say that I would have a question on this one. I'm not asking you to make identical bungalow designs or anything, but it would be my initial impression from just the front facade that this would not be compatible with the properties on either side.
Okay. On that, based on everything we read in the standards and guidelines, the guidelines were specific in improving the district. It didn't actually specify on that, so we didn't really break down into each adjoining property. We did match the scale of the west adjoining property from a height perspective, and all setbacks, side yards. We maintained all of that to keep uniformity. So that was our approach of looking at it as bringing that historical nature, but not identical.
Right.
I kind of agree with Mary Jo. I think the houses on that block all have very distinct character in the sense that they have the porches on the front. The mass of the house is kind of set back. If the porch is 8 feet deep, maybe, I'm not sure what that is. There's, the mass of the house comes back. So specifically, for example, on your proposal, I think having the staircase kind of up flush with the porch kind of adds the perception of added mass. Makes it feel taller, makes it feel bigger, and I think that is kind of inconsistent with kind of the neighborhood character.
The original design was a little more traditional to that street, but we literally took that design offset from the porch from standards and guidelines. That's kind of how we moved to that, because I'm going to see your side of it. I'm just showing where we got that specifically from.
No, absolutely.
The guidelines that are recommended, and based our case on that.
And absolutely. I think if you go to other parts of Heritage Hills and different areas, I think this building typology might actually fit in to those parts. But I think specifically to this street, I feel like, we do look at the massing, and that's why I kind of feel like the massing doesn't necessarily meet. I think there is a mix of 1-story and 2-story, so I definitely recognize that. But they're still pretty compact 2-story houses, and they're kind of, the second story is sometimes set back a little bit, or it's at least behind the porch. So I think there's some small, I don't want to, I think it's a good effort. I just think there's a few small kind of tweaks. I think that would help it integrate better into the street, the overall character of the street and the massing of the street. For example, I think it would be interesting, kind of from my analysis, be nice to see like an elevation maybe with like both adjacent houses.
I have added that in there. You can
you
see
have?
a perspective view from an ISO coming from the south.
And it'd be nice to see that as an elevation as well. I mean, I don't know. I
I tried to actually match that. There was you couldn't ever get it close enough to get a wide enough scale to get it matched up perfect. So I got one that I could get 99% to match up from a perspective, but didn't have a full front elevation.
I think the other would be maybe come from this perspective in that, we kind of have a high style, and then we have, kind of, the medium kind of, and And this one is so much more of like a high style between two bungalows, which are, not high style properties. And when you look at when you go up and down the street, when you're looking at those designs and you see there's, just on the left, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different, different roof lines. And over here you have a window poking out and you have all of that detail. When you look at your elevation and then you go through, you have very large, long, flat elevations, and that would, but yes, and that's why I don't think I guess that's just one direction maybe to try to, for me to clarify that it's not, doesn't to me fit in well on that street.
Okay. I think we were looking for something that provided something that street didn't have. Every other street really, even in Heritage Hills East or Heritage Hills proper, you kind of have every type of design style. 22nd does have some colonial style, 2 doors down. Right. Then the west property, which is a craftsman 2-story bungalow, but they've refinished it in stucco. So it kind of transitions into Spanish revival and gets a little lost. So that was kind of one of the reasons we picked that. It added something that street didn't have, but still tied back into the overall district aesthetics.
I mean, and that's against, when the number one thing I think we look for is, it doesn't have to be a design that is similar, but it has to be compatible. And when you're saying that you want something completely different, then that actually is against the guidelines because we want it to be compatible. It doesn't have to look alike, but...
Not completely different, but adding some unique character to that street that still matches the overall objective of what the standards and guidelines put forward.
Well, and since it's a district, we're not really trying to add to the district, I don't think. We're trying to be compatible. So we don't really want something new to stand out. We want particularly new to blend in to some degree.
Yeah, it can blend in. It can still have some, update,
right.
The windows can be a little bit,
And I'm not saying anything about the design itself, but just the features, that you bring together to create that design.
I know exactly what you're describing in Heritage Hills. There's some blocks where there's 5 different styles.
You have Art Deco that's set back even further on some streets. And
sure.
New construction standards and guidelines actually, that's the first thing it states, is it does not want to replicate or recreate the previous structure. It wants to take elements from the entire district and design requirements and add that back in with modern adjustments.
Sure. I think what's unique about this block, though, is that you do have such a clear, consistent kind of design language, that you might not have on other blocks. And I think, I think there's a way that you can do something that's, I don't think it's going to appear old or historic necessarily. And I think, there's some room for using different materials and changing the design somewhat from what's there. I'm not saying you have to, do a bungalow with, 5 roof lines necessarily, but I think the design could integrate better or be more compatible with the neighborhood. For example, the one specific thing that I noticed, for example, the staircase, where, if you look down the street, every single house has, the porch, and then you have the house set back, and that, that has a very consistent design character. I think making a change like that might make it more compatible to the street.
That's where I countered that on referring actually to that standards and guidelines, where it shows that exact example with porch setbacks matching almost this exact streetscape. So, that was, just want that to be noted. That is specifically where we pulled that design language from.
Yeah, I think that graphic, there is a graphic in the guidelines that shows a house with a similar configuration where there's a projection to the side of the porch. I don't think that necessarily means that the guidelines are saying do this in every case. It was just showing a streetscape alignment.
Just to cite where we pulled that from and the justification for it. Because that is how we have to design this, is based on that standards and guidelines. And there is an 80-page new construction portion of that.
Now, the guidelines sometimes, it's almost like in a vacuum, because the guidelines are trying to give specific recommendations, but it doesn't have the context, that you have when you have a specific lot or a specific house. It's kind of in a vacuum, so it gives you recommendations on what could be done. And I think this could be totally appropriate, in maybe a few blocks over even,
There's not many blank lots left a few blocks over. That's true. Kind of part of the issue with this.
But I think there's a lot of room to where you could essentially have the, very similar, it might not be the exact same arrangement, but, the same probably square footages, the same, features, with a slightly tweaked design that could better integrate onto that streetscape, is, kind of my opinion.
I'm in agreement. I probably would be, I'm inclined to even, if somebody brought a very contemporary design, I would be inclined to approve it if it was compatible with the other houses. But so I'm not opposed to doing different designs. But I feel pretty clear on this one, is that it is not compatible with its neighbors or the street.
Like from this portion, but when we're doing the proposal and all of the submittals associated with it, we can't really base that on our original design. I would much rather have a contemporary design. I may actually keep it as a personal home if I could have adjusted from that.
Well, you can take
requirements that are laid out very specifically. We can't do that.
That I would say is not my interpretation, because we have a very contemporary house in Mesta Park that was done 10 years ago, and it was approved. And we did another kind of similar kind of contemporary approval in Jefferson Park not too long ago.
Jefferson Park does have its own. I know which house you're talking about. I've actually seen their submittal, and that house turned out fantastic.
So I don't think that we're opposed to contemporary, but I do think, as far as like what Hans is saying, your floor plan and everything, I think that, you can stick with that, but I do feel like that you're going to have to make changes on the outside to be compatible with the neighborhood.
So based on that statement, what would you recommend from a front elevation in adjustments deviating from that?
This is a really hard part because we can't design it for you. we can only suggest and try to direct, but we can't.
I'm asking that because we went specifically to what was quoted as how we should have approached it, and
I think designing something like this is a real challenge, and so, a designer, needs to take in a lot of the, the history of the homes, the architecture. You have to have a lot of that knowledge, I think, sometimes to put together a new construction for a historic district. It's a challenge for anybody that's come before us with new construction. It's a difficult road.
It complicates it more because this home does, like you said, fit on numerous other streets. And based on what the proposal, the kind of a goal, it's always looking at the district and versus you're saying that's not really how it's.
Well, it's always a case by case.
No, I'm not saying that's not the case. But so from that, then we have to kind of adjust because based on looking at a district and historical qualities, we did meet those objectives.
Well, we also have to address the, immediate context, I think, is important. I think one approach could be, almost like take a survey of the houses on the street and see what are the common characteristics or similar characteristics and where do they differ. And that might help inform, what kind of tweaks you could make to maybe make it more compatible. For example, I submitted a house, I built a house, and it was I think I came back 2 or 3 times, it really is, it was, kind of a push-pull, and
I didn't think this would be easy.
And I was ultimately, I was happier with the end result, based on the guidance from the commission, but.
I think my not frustration, but just we're using what is given by the city and the regulations and what we're told to approach this as, and using it and reading it based on what its black and white definition is, and finding out that we can't really utilize that fully.
I would ask,
because of this specific streetscape.
Right. Did you all consult with staff?
We have talked to staff. We provided some additional, and they did make on the exterior, on the front elevation, which is why we provided that full citation. And we also provided additional schedules, which are in there, and revised, fence height went down, added scale to neighboring properties, showed the shared drive, how we are still using that shared drive. We're repairing and remediating it because it's not been repaired or maintained, really.
So I I know that there has been a lot of back and forth with staff on getting all of the documentation that was needed. I know you communicated more with Angela earlier on, so I haven't looked through every correspondence about the actual design of the structure. I do want to say I think there's a lot in the guidelines that is very useful and does not say you have to specifically do this, you have to specifically do that. Yes, there's a sketch of a streetscape that looks like this, but that is by no means meant to be a direction to do it like this. I think based on some of the commission's feedback, it might be worthwhile to really sit down with staff and talk through the design elements and how this body uses these guidelines and how preservation uses these guidelines and principles as a professional design field.
And I think that's also where it kind of gets back and forth, because some of the citations that we got from staff were based not outside of the new construction and standards and guidelines. And it specifies in there that these are related to new construction only and does not reference backwards. So, I mean, do we need to look at it from the whole packet or specifically just the new construction standards and guidelines?
I think there are sections in the guidelines that are applicable to all applications as far as the review process itself and the commission's purview and the kind of big picture goals of the historic preservation districts. There are also guidelines that are for specific to materials to be used on new construction and additions. And then there are guidelines that are relevant to other items like the driveway and the fence and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, the guidelines might suggest, the guidelines might allow certain materials, but they might not suggest what certain materials to use. I think that's where.
I understand on that, which we've added those additional like cut sheets and specs that were not in that original. So we have added those. Those are in that packet you're looking at currently, as well as made revisions and noted that based on feedback we received.
I know some of that can get lost in the back and forth and everything, although I do see on the specific findings for the recommendation to continue this item, it says that a revised design be more sympathetic to the surrounding context of the neighborhood, additional documentation addressing missing or inaccurate. So I guess, it seems like you've addressed the second part of that with additional information, materials, and things like that. I'm not sure if the staff could maybe help
The first part
advise.
was why we pulled that specific example, but we've discussed that further. Because that specific example and citation was not in the original packet, and so we pulled that and added that specific sheet.
But again, I mean, I understand, the guidelines are kind of a general, they're a guideline. It's not like a code, and, there's no context in the guidelines. So we have to look at, what is the context for this specific project, and I think that's kind of where we're getting at is, you're presenting us with a design, and kind of it's our job to look at this specific design and how it relates to the fabric of that existing neighborhood.
That's the difficult part for both of us on that. I'm finding the middle ground essentially on it. But that's also why we provided that visual, because that was our justification of that specifically. Now, if it was just a paragraph describing a description, yeah, I can see how that can kind of blur. There's an actual image, almost identical streetscape, plus the elevation of this property. It's hard to disagree with that or take it out of context, because it matches identical.
I think staff's recommending we can continue this to allow the applicant to work with the staff on some of their concerns. Is that correct?
Yes.
And to be able to consider the new information that's handed to us. So
we have to continue an application. If you're amenable to a continuance, we have to continue that to a specific date. It would either be March 6th for the next meeting or April 3rd, which is the following meeting. For March 6th meeting, we need new materials submitted by Tuesday of next week.
Okay.
that's a lot to do between now and Tuesday.
Well, I have a large portion of it done, but adjusting and talking about design visuals. So would I communicate with you to schedule a meeting time to sit down and do that with staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And you've got we both emailed with you, so, yeah.
And I would also, I think that, like has been said, is that people generally for new construction, you come back more than once. So, if you want to take more time, I would suggest taking...
Based on the economics and also me spending this, I'm currently paid interest in time value, money's a real thing. I mean,
I understand that. I'm just, I guess, fair warning, that you come back again, only having a week to make changes might not be
I do
sufficient.
propose one thing. It seems everyone was in a large portion of an agreement based on the existing floor plan that was currently proposed, or kind of the layout, porch, and the rear section of the house. We would like to, if possible, start with some of the remediation of the shared drive, or at least get some of this project adjusted on the non-structural items. What is the possibility of looking at it in terms of that?
You're asking to get approval of certain parts of the design?
I'm curious how that works, because I noticed on the previous submittal, there were different sections that were approved specifically, and that was out of curiosity, because there is work that would need to be done on the shared drive and rear area of the house.
Well, that, okay, yeah. I was going to say, the previous one, there's an existing house there, so it's a little different. So, yeah, could you step up to the podium, please?
Hi, my name is Maurice Taylor, and I share the drive at 119 Northwest 22nd to his property at 121 Northwest 22nd. So I was just here to see the design, because, his layout, what his plans were as far as the drive way.
Had you not seen the?
I just saw the plan.
Just saw it? Okay.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Okay.
Are you the current resident? I know you are the property.
I'm the owner. Yes.
Okay.
And if I, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
Is it appropriate? I also own 2 properties across the street.
You need to state your name, too.
My name is Debbie Blackburn, and I own 2 properties across the street, 2 bungalows. We do have a design review committee. This is part of Heritage Hills now, and as far as I know, we have never seen these plans. This is the first time I've ever seen this. I would recommend to the gentleman that you're not going to have enough time before trying to change this or make an application that is appropriate for that street, that you put it off a little longer, that you work with city staff. Bungalows were the original open floor plan, and you can build something that looks like what is on the rest of the street and not have something that has a mass that is inappropriate to those 35-foot lots. But you need to work with the neighborhood. That's what the design review committees in all the HPs exist for. And we have not seen this. We've never seen this. Until this came in the mail, excuse me, I can hardly talk, a week ago, I had no idea what the plan was for this. And I know that his neighbor that shares the drive had called me with concern about where was the garage going to be put. There wasn't any discussion with her at all. So this needs to be put off, because it's building a new house on a vacant lot in a suburb is different than doing it in an HP. We have worked for a long time to try to keep those neighborhoods intact. If there's not some continuity there, and there is continuity on that block, the stucco house that he talks about next to it was built at the very same time. It's a different design. It's a Mission style, but Mission was also a very important part of the bungalow community. So it is the same. But the massing, the scale, the flat, everything about it, from what I've just seen temporarily, would cause real consternation. And we've got things going on that we thought we had put down about, well, the houses are not big enough in that area, so we need to tear them down so we can build a bigger one. If you start that, there's not going to be any need for the HP Commission. And I would, if I could ask Katie, the neighborhood design review committees need to have access to plans for new infill, because there aren't a lot of lots, as he says, but they need to be something that we've seen, so we don't come down here when he's already got plans and say, this is not appropriate. You can build a decent-sized house on that lot that is an open floor plan but looks like a bungalow on the outside, it is not difficult.
Can I jump in there real quick? Were the plans that were in our packet, were they not available to others?
No, so everything that we've had from this application along the way has been in the public record. The applications are scanned in and posted online shortly after they're submitted. And then when they actually get scheduled on an agenda to go out for the meeting, that whole agenda packet with all of the attachments gets posted online. The notice goes out. We have a required notice that goes out in the mail to certain abutting property owners. We also have an email list that goes out to neighborhood representatives that have asked to be on that list. There's one that goes out with just the meeting materials, the agendas, and that sort of thing. There's another email list that goes out once a week with every new application that has come in. I will say that this application actually came in quite a while ago, so it may be something that someone in the neighborhood saw it come across their computer screen that an application had been submitted, but it took a long time for us to get it to the commission.
So is it not sent, are the plans not sent to the design review committees? Because I know you worked hard to get a design review committee for every HP.
The whole packet, what is divided up, and the applications for each neighborhood are sent to those neighborhood representatives. It's the responsibility of the neighborhoods to tell us who to send them to. We try to keep up to date with everybody, and some people ask to have it mailed, some people ask to have it emailed to them, but it is sent out at the same time as the commission's packets are sent to them prior to the meeting.
Okay, well, I am not aware that it went to the design review committee or whoever's in charge of that. And this is, there has been, since the two neighborhoods merged, there has been, I'm sure it's going to somebody different than it used to, so that could be. But I'm really concerned because it seems like there's an assault on, not for building new construction, I don't mean that, but just wanting to tear down or wanting to build something that's massive, that's out of scale. When I think scale and massing has to be considered. I would just say that I would put this off as long as you could if you really want to build on that lot, so that we get something there that's appropriate that the neighborhood will not protest.
I appreciate your concerns, and I would also like to correct some of those and talk about the scale and square footage, because you did say massive and compared it to a suburban style home.
All you guys need to talk to the commission.
No, I'm talking on that. I just want to from impervious coverage, we match both. We're almost identical to the east and west adjoining lots. Height and square footage, we're very similar to the west adjoining property as well. So we're not, I understand the porch and the stairwell kind of a section that abuts out, that is a distinct difference. But in terms of scale, proportion, green space, what we're sustaining, we're not demolishing anything.
I would like to see you take a little more time, too, to not only meet with the staff, but also meet with the neighborhood committee, and especially your neighbor who you share a driveway with, because she doesn't seem familiar with it.
Well, it's also, that's a rental property as well.
Is what?
That's a rental property as
Well,
well.
she's sitting right there.
I know, but
So
you're currently not residing in that property, correct?
You're the owner.
The fact that it's a rental property shouldn't be
No, I
consideration.
I'd just like to see you review what you're planning to do with.
I'm in agreement like I suggested, and then although we just were looking basically at the front elevation, and then the discussion goes to the shared driveway, and I'm looking at the elevation that would be on the shared driveway, I don't think that also would come under the same comments that we said on the elevation. If I was a neighbor, I would not want to see that and drive. It would be like I would be in a suburban neighborhood driving down this long driveway with a brick thing with the garage attached and everything. So we didn't even get there. So I really feel like that, again, it would be in your best interest to do a lot more, spend more time with staff so that you don't waste time coming back again.
Absolutely open to that.
And the neighborhood committee as well, I think, would be appropriate. We'd like to continue to April.
Well, we can continue it to the March date, and it'll be heard at the March. We have to put it on the agenda that day, no matter what. But the commission can always continue it once again.
He'd lose one continuance.
Yeah.
How many does he get? Two?
Yep, it can be heard 3 times.
3 times.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
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 I'm-
So you want to go to March?
Yes.
And then if it's not ready, go to April. and lose-
March 3rd,
March 6th.
March 6th. I make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00158 to the March 6th meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, then continue. See you next. Oh, sorry.
HPCA 18-00200 at 545 Northwest 38th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Aaron Renegard by Andrew Thomas for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct 1-story addition at rear of attached garage elective, 2, construct 2-story addition at rear of dwelling elective, 3, remodel existing addition at rear of dwelling to create balcony elective, and 4, install new opening and door at 2nd story of existing dwelling elective.
Okay.
Couple of comments is if the applicant is present. Yes, if you want to come forward. I just wanted to note that, 1, the commission reviewed and approved a very similar addition at this property several years ago that was never completed. So if this looks a little familiar, that's why. Some of you have seen this or something very close to it before. And number 2, we kind of broke up what is really one big, renovation of the property into several different pieces. Not because I think the applicant has any intention of really doing these pieces and parts separately, but so that they could move forward with one or not the other, or if they decide to do the addition but not do the balcony, they wouldn't have to come back and amend their CA to address those things.
Yes, exactly. My name is Andrew Thomas. I'm the architect for Aaron Renegard. And yes, I was also the architect on the design a few years ago that we had previously submitted and revised a number of times and got approved. They decided not to do it, but here we are back at the design table and trying to come back. Their needs have changed a little bit, so we changed it up. I would also like to note that items number 3 and 4 are no longer things that the homeowner is wanting to pursue. Perhaps he no longer wants to raise the ceiling on the existing addition, nor does she want to place a balcony. And actually, there was never really to be a balcony. It was only to be a railing for decorative effect on top of the new flat roof, basically. And there is no door. I'm not certain where a second floor door is. Was that noted as an exterior door coming out onto the balcony? Or because I don't believe there ever really was a second floor door that we are adding.
So what do we need to do about the items
So we can
3 and 4?
we just consider those withdrawn. Those items are withdrawn.
Yes, so items number 1 and number 2.
But they are on the drawings that we have.
Yes,
Yep.
So we would have to have new drawings.
yes.
Yes, if approved, we would have the applicant submit new drawings that show it without those items.
And it would
And would they
simply,
come before us again? Because how could we, I'm not really sure what are we crossing off?
on the rear elevation, it would simply be that railing decoration that does not exist now, and it would not be built. And the height of that new roof, we were trying to raise that ceiling height. Right now, they have an 8-foot ceiling. They were trying to get as much as they could, so we were going to spend quite a lot of money raising the roof and only get maybe a foot, 18 inches of additional height. And budget constraints being what they are, that's something that we can toss, but they would still like to remove the fireplace and then add the French doors.
So there's a flat roof over the old addition, and there would or would not be a railing there.
There would not be a railing there. The roof as it is now would stay exactly the same over that living room.
And the roof was going to be raised where?
It would not be raised.
It will not be raised, and
No.
it would be back at the ridge line of the original roof on the back?
I'm trying to, so there's an existing second floor bedroom behind that
Mm-hmm.
and it would still stay the same.
Just
So
stay
that
the
roof
same.
height would stay the same, and the roof would still die into that exterior wall at the same
Okay.
location.
Okay. So on the elevation, so on the south elevation, where it looks like there's two doors and it's raised, that's where it won't be raised?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. I have a question on the west elevation, and I think, I don't remember if I remember this project, I think. Hadn't been that long ago. I'm looking at the roof line on the garage, which has been altered so that you can have a new addition on the back.
Yes.
It just seems, it just seems odd, I guess. It's not, doesn't match the other one now, and it just has an odd, which kind of makes it look like a remodel instead of a part of the house.
Well, and of course, we did that just so we could keep the existing ridge height the same, so the appearance from the front would be identical to what it is now. There would be no
Right.
change. And I agree that having that irregular pitch makes it a little bit less attractive.
It looks, and then I looked at your floor plan, and I understand that behind those walls, there's either a garage, there's cabinets, or there's a closet, but I just really have a concern when we just have big brick walls without windows in them, particularly from I understand the function and everything, I understand what you're doing, but I think with these bigger additions, which now you've doubled that original addition, old addition, that the neighbors, they're we're virtually, when we build these bigger additions, we're just building additions that your neighbors are having to live with, and they're blocking more sunlight and trees, and then you look over there and there's just this big wall of brick. I have a concern on that. And then I think there's that area, and then the same happens on the east elevation, where there's another big wall. I think it's where the TV is, maybe on the other side or something. And then above that, on the other side of the new bathroom, there's just so much brick and so little windows, so few windows.
And we had addressed that with staff earlier, too, and I did add an extra window in. The homeowner is absolutely agreeable to add whatever fenestration is necessary to make that. And I would say on the east side elevation, there are no existing windows on that elevation right now, so I wasn't adding another window in.
Maybe on the
There is
upper.
one. On the west side, we're happy to put a garage window.
Over the years, like during, like in the 70s, they had so many big additions. They're just these big bins that come off the back of historic houses. There's just no windows, and it doesn't look good from the neighbor's side, and it doesn't have the feel of a historic house that has 44 windows. It has because we're reducing windows. Anyway, that's my comments on that, is the angle on the garage, and then to me, needs some windows.
And I could only add that on that extension of that roof, in order to make it really work that way, it would look good and work good from that side elevation if that was a gable end, but unfortunately, we just create a dead...
Right. I remember the front of the house.
A dead valley into the house.
Is this is a mid-block house?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with the pitch because it does keep the same pitch at the front, which can be seen from the right-of-way. You're just getting that in the back, and of course from the side. But being a mid-block, your neighbor's going to see it, but I'm okay with that. I think the issue with the windows, though, I think we need some more windows there.
On the garage side?
On the west elevation?
Well, one is on the new addition on the first floor, and then above that, in the new, it'd be, I think it's the closet, probably closet or the bathroom.
Right.
I know it's difficult sometimes because of the new function.
Well, and I think in that
Master
case, we
closet.
would add a window and probably just sheetrock it on the inside. So it would have the look of a window on the outside,
Right.
but we're happy to do that.
What?
We're happy to do it.
Katie, I know we discussed this with no answer to it, is the addition plus addition plus addition idea. Did we have any conclusion on that, or we're case by case? Or?
I think it's just a case-by-case evaluation by the commission. I mean, beyond the black and white kind of numbers that are allowed for the square footage of an addition, the commission has to evaluate when a house has had multiple additions, whether or not they're within the allowed square footage. Are they going beyond the point of being compatible with the massing of the house and the size of the lot and the development of the property in the district? So if we look at the currently proposed addition in relation to the historic structure, it meets that guideline. You could crunch the numbers a number of different ways, looking at the previously existing addition, and come up with a different figure. But I think you're within the guidelines to say that it meets it the way it's currently designed. If you think that otherwise, it's also compatible in size and massing to the structure.
I personally interpret that as the historical footprint. So when I look at that, it has doubled in size, and if there's sort of never-ending additions, then what makes it offset that doubling of size? I mean, what impact does the overall increase in size have on street view, the neighbors, the amount of land on the lot, those kinds of things? But I mean, the historical footprint of the house is 986 square feet, so over time this will double it. Now, whether or not that is something that is compelling in terms of a decision on the application, I think that's case by case more than what is the historical footprint of the house, because that's a fact.
So I thought the guideline was the historical footprint. Okay. So does that include the garage, by the way?
There's another Crown Heights.
If detached?
Edgemere, where we have that one house, and we discussed this, and it was like we had an old addition, and then we were looking at another addition.
The one on 31st Street. Well, maybe that's not the one you're talking about. So I'm confused. So do we know what the historical footprint was?
Yeah.
Let's see a bunch of numbers.
Yep, 929 square feet for the footprint of the historic structure. And then there's a later addition that was done that was 437 square feet. So when you're trying to it's kind of irrelevant, because when you're trying to get to that 750 square feet or 50%, 750 is already above the 50% anyway. They can go up to 750 square feet with the addition. So, yeah.
It seems like in this case, the addition is kind of eating into the original addition, so it's kind of replacing the original addition and then adding some onto it. The addition, the original, so you have the original footprint, then you have addition, but this addition is kind of, it's like removing that addition and rebuilding.
Modifying. So just go back to the historical footprint, 929 plus maximum of 750 square feet is 1680, more or less. Is that right? Was that right? Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
what you would normally have, allowable. But instead, right now, it's, I don't understand, the evolutionary 1924. That's the historical total square footage?
Yes.
And 2853, that's the existing?
That's the, I think that's what it would be with the proposed.
Proposed. So if you just go back to basics, as it would just propose, even remodeling the remodel, it's way over the square footage is be allowable, correct?
They are proposing to add 492 square feet. The guidelines allow them to add 750 square feet, regardless of the size of the existing structure. So they are well under that 750 square feet, regardless of how big. If the existing house was 200 square feet, they could add 750 square feet.
Okay, so 50% of the historical or 750.
Whichever is the larger of the two.
Okay, so now that I see what you're saying, that over time you'd be adding 750, 750, 750.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to get straight in my head.
I mean, I will say the massing, you've got two pretty large houses on either side, and, the addition's kind of, it's two-story, and it's close in to that house. So I feel like I think it won't have too great a negative impact on the neighboring houses, in my opinion. But I do see some extra windows might be nice to kind of articulate the facade a little bit more.
On the east and the west?
I mean, I think if the owner is amenable to that, then we should add those there.
Should we give them direction on how many and location?
Right. Okay, so my suggestion would be on either side of the master bath and closet, which would be the east and west elevation, and then...
On the second floor?
On the second floor, and then directly under that is where I see one kind of missing.
On the ground floor?
On the ground floor.
They have the new fireplace plus built-ins.
Not on that side, on the west elevation.
On the west, okay.
Yeah, the window that was originally, that we had planned to go there, lost out to the upper cabinet space, which...
So a window in the garage, basically?
So there is a window there now?
No, there is no window
there is
there.
no
We had originally planned there to be a window, but
Oh.
upper cabinet space took control, and
A window in the garage or a window in
No, a window on the,
kitchen?
would be the kitchen.
Okay.
So it sounds like
3 windows.
this could be continued with the direction for the applicant to work with the homeowner on the best way to appropriately add in some additional windows, because they may have particular needs or changes to the floor plan they're willing to make to accommodate that.
Okay.
yes, that'd be fine. I can submit, whatever is necessary. The homeowner is agreeable to adding windows if required, so...
Are there any other
That.
comments for him to take back? Okay, is there a motion?
Are you okay? Do you think you can get everything back to us early next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that would be on March 6th.
I make a motion to continue HPCA 1800200 to the March 6th, March 6th meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this one's,
All right, next. What's that? 5-minute break, okay. Great. We'll get back at about 15 after, more or less. Okay? Is that good enough, Paula? Okay.
HPCA 18-00202 at 111 Northwest 15th Street in Heritage Hills East was continued at the beginning of the meeting. That will be heard April 3rd, so that item will not be heard today. HPCA 18-00205 at 439 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Eric and Nova Mullaney by Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio, PLLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct parking cover elective, 2, install additional paving elective, and 3, construct covered walkway elective.
Okay.
I'm Eric Flesky. I'm one of the owners of the house.
And the applicant, Ken, notified us that somewhere along the way we had butchered your names.
Somehow my wife's maiden name got stuck on there.
We do have the names correct in our paperwork. We have 2 different last names for each homeowner, and we gave them one name.
Yeah, we used hers. Okay. All right. So, parking cover.
So I am here to answer any questions.
All right. So what's the background on this?
Looks like staff is recommending a continuance in order to address a number of items. Have you read your staff report?
Most of it, yes.
Okay. Have you looked at their recommendation?
Catherine will assist with any technical items.
Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio. We were the architects for this project. We did send some comments to the staff report via email this morning to staff. I don't know if they had time to get those out to you or not, but I do have copies.
Catherine, I don't think either one of us received anything from you today. Just FYI.
We'll take your copies.
I thought maybe you did because I got an email shortly thereafter that answered one of the questions I had posed in my email, which was, were there any neighborhood comments? So.
Okay, I'm looking for the covered walkway. Where's the on the plan?
What are you looking for?
Covered walkway. I see the parking cover.
It extends out from the north end of the parking cover across to the back porch. It runs east-west.
Oh, there it is.
That's what
Line
that's
of
referring
walkway
to.
cover. I see it. I see it. All right.
So what we're passing around is that I've gone through the staff report and I've written a response to each of the items that were in the staff report. and we can certainly discuss any of those items, but you do have them in writing before you. And then we also provided a map of the closely surrounding area and how many properties there have a porte cochere. Even though this doesn't necessarily meet the definition of a porte cochere, its purpose is basically the same. So we've shown how many there are in the area. And then we've also provided a couple of photographs which show you that the current garage, which is faces Walker, is about 10 feet below the grade of the backyard, and you can see the steps that are the only access point from the garage to the backyard.
Are any of the porte cocheres historic?
I'm sorry?
The porte cocheres that you highlight, are they historic additions, or do you know?
I would say they probably are, but we didn't specifically look for that. We just looked to see if they had one.
So on the paving, the driveway, the only paving you're proposing to add then is 23 feet 6 inches. That would be under the porte cochere and a walkway. Is that correct?
It's actually less than 23 feet. The entire length of the car cover is 23 feet 6 inches. And if you look on page 6 of your of your meeting attachments, you'll see that there's a hatched portion, and on the back of that page, we're actually adding 8 feet 8 5/8 inches of concrete to the back.
Okay, so you're only adding 8 feet 8 5/8 inches, and then the walkway too, right?
Yeah, then, the purpose is to have a covered, to arrive in the car, be able to get out without getting wet, and then to have a cover for the sidewalk that goes from the car cover to the back deck, which is covered. And that's a distance of 10 feet.
Well, okay.
Looking at a plan, so it looks like it's not connecting to the house anywhere, but that little section of roof that goes from the porte cochere to the back steps, I don't see any columns for that. How is that attached?
That it's supported by the car cover structure and then the back porch cover structure.
So it does touch the house?
No, it does not touch the house.
Covers?
Oh, okay, if you want to call the roof of the porch part of the house.
Technically, that's part, yeah.
Technically, I guess it is. It's not a historic porch cover.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't possibly read all the comments right now. I mean, Catherine's always so detailed, but
well, I think there's
read them and process them.
Three basic points that, they're very repetitive because there's a lot of repetition in the guidelines that are being cited. And of course, some of the guidelines don't apply because they talk about windows and walls and things like that. And so those are pretty simple. But there's basically 3 points that we think that this is an appropriate response to a difficult problem. We have a garage that is not really pedestrian-friendly. They do use the garage, they use the upper floor as a weight room, and they park one car in the garage that's the original garage. Inside that garage, even though it measures 22 feet by 22 feet on the outside, inside it has about a foot subtracted from each side because it has some tilt-up concrete walls that a previous owner installed on the inside to help keep the garage up. And so now we're down to about 20 feet. It used to have a wall in the middle between the two separate garage doors, and that was taken out, but you have some kickers in there that also kind of reduce that space. So you can comfortably get one car in there, but you cannot functionally get two cars in there. So we're looking for a solution that would be friendlier for accessing the house from a parked car and without having to go up those precarious concrete steps that are on Walker. So this would be a second car parking opportunity without having to manipulate or change the existing garage. The car cover itself does not physically touch the historic aspects or parts of the original building. It is set way back. In fact, in the photograph that you have before you, the gate, as you can see from the site plan, is about at the, is just past the first bump out. It's at the first bump out, and this car cover is way back from that by another, good 20 feet or so. So it's going to be minimally visible. It's very minimal in its materials so that it could be as transparent as possible and still provide some shelter.
I think what you're calling a car cover still reads visually as a porte-cochere.
Well, and of course, we're trying to emulate that appearance because we feel that that is, that's a historic feature that's frequently found in the historic districts, and it would be appropriate to have that blend in and be compatible with the building. But technically, it doesn't meet the definition of a porte-cochere.
We had a case when somebody wanted to build something like that on the visible from the side. It's on the side street, visible from the side of the street, very visible. And I think we denied that. We called it a carport, though, I think. So, but this is set back so far.
And it's on the interior side of the lot.
Because I mean, one of the things about that other one, it was right on the street. It's visible from the street. It was a corner lot, so just pointing out what I'm thinking. Last one we saw.
We had, the one that was the closest to it was I can't think of where it was. It was a corner lot. And it had a little bitty garage in the back. And then they wanted a pergola, and they were going to then have this paved area, and they were going to cover part of it with a pergola.
Yep.
We did not pass that. It had the brick fence on the side.
It was all kind of tied together. Yeah. But this is kind of like a porte-cochere in some ways. It fits the design.
It would be pretty reversible, I would say, because it's not, there's one physical attachment to the back patio roof, but there's no real physical connection to the house, per se. I don't know about the fiberglass columns. I know that we had a different project where we discussed fiberglass columns. I can't remember, I think I would suggest using wood or some other material maybe. But I recognize that you're trying to kind of match the aesthetic of the house. But
I think we ended up approving those fiberglass columns.
We've approved fiberglass columns in a number of locations, and the guidelines allow for them to be appropriate and under some circumstances, even for replacement of historic front porch columns. Usually we see those when there's some element of the condition of the porch that causes ongoing water damage.
Right.
We have also approved them on back porches, back decks for new additions.
Yeah, this
So
is all
we've
new.
seen fiberglass before.
But I
Right.
think normally, street view, wood is something that the guidelines prefer.
That's what we prefer. I mean, I still don't see how it's different than a carport. And we've always said that we didn't do carports. So I don't know, I mean, I can't see how that we can, I don't see how that somebody else then can't come in and say, I want a carport. I don't care what you call it. It's really hard for me on this one because we've had these over the years. I mean, for years, people have been upset over carports and old carports. We had, George, we had we had a big carport problem. You know, you remember which one I'm talking about?
I mean, technically, the guidelines don't even address carport.
Right.
There's not a guideline in there that actually uses that word as to whether they're silent. I mean, they don't say that you can't have them, and they don't say that you can. So, I mean, if porte cochere is French for carport, then I guess you call it what it is, right? But,
right.
I mean, in essence, the goal is to provide some kind of a cover that is compatible, and we know that there are porte cocheres, and we know that there are pergolas, but of course pergolas have, open roofs. They don't have a solid roof. And then trellises is another one that you find throughout the staff report that is also referenced, but a trellis is a vertical element that usually supports vegetation. So, if you have those three elements, pergolas, trellises, and porte cochere, then I guess that this is most closely resembling a porte cochere. And I think the thing about, carports was the idea that someone might just add one to the front of their garage, which sticks it out in front of the building, and it might be made out of, metal with metal posts, and that is not the case here at all.
Well, I don't even see anything here that says that you can't add a porte cochere, if you want to call it that.
It says, do not add a porte cochere to a building where none historically existed.
Okay, what other?
3.3.38.
Oh, okay, I was reading.
It's kind of a tricky thing because on the one hand, the design is intended to look like a porte cochere, which is, the more kind of architecturally compatible design, but yet our guidelines do not support adding porte cocheres. So we try to,
sorry, I missed that.
to look at guidelines for all possibly applicable structures in this case. So that's why you've got lots of different sections of the guidelines about accessory buildings and where those are appropriate.
Right. So, I missed that sentence. So if porte cochere equals carport, it'd be the same. No carports.
I generally look to the section on accessory buildings when we talk about carports. The code calls carports accessory buildings or accessory structures. That's a much more general section of the guidelines that we use for tool sheds and for outdoor kitchens and all sorts of things. But it generally does talk about placing accessory buildings where they were present on the site historically, minimizing their visibility from the street, that sort of thing.
I think, again, no matter what you call it, it reads as a porte cochere, and the guidelines do not support adding those where none previously existed. So
Well, technically,
I'm kind of
that
stuck on
guideline that Katie just pointed out was 3.3.38, right? Katie, was that the number?
Yes.
And so it says, do not create a false historical appearance through the application of new elements and details to a porte cochere. So that, to me, says there's an existing porte cochere and you're not supposed to add new things to it. And do not add a porte cochere to a building where none historically existed. So the proposed car cover does not alter an existing porte cochere, and the proposed car cover is not being added to the existing building and is freestanding. It does not meet the definition of a porte cochere. It's not, the car cover itself is not physically attached to the building.
Yeah, I see that, but it's 16 inches away, and it still reads as part of the structure, in my opinion. What were you going to say, Klaus?
No, yeah, that's basically my comment.
If the commission finds that objectionable, then I have offered on the last page of the last 2 pages of my analysis of the staff report some counter findings to the specific findings. So for all of those things, I also add some unique circumstances, those being that the existing garage is not physically big enough on the interior to park 2 cars at the same time. The path between the existing garage and the dwelling is risky, both in its remoteness and nearly 10-foot difference in elevation from the garage floor to the backyard gate. And the proposed car cover and covered sidewalk have been designed to specifically address the site condition of this specific property, as opposed to some generic explanation for all properties in the district.
So I know we can consider whether the garage can park 2 cars. You said it's how wide now? 20 what?
Technically, the dimensions are 22 feet on the outside by 22 feet, but on the interior, you're down to less than 20 feet because of those concrete walls that have been added.
I think that's room to park 2 cars. From what we've had workshops to see 20 feet would park 2 average-sized cars. So I don't know, maybe you have larger vehicles, but we can't consider that.
If you park 2 cars in there, you can't open the doors to both of those cars.
My garage is 18 by 18.
You can, it's tight.
And we can. It's tough, but we can, so.
I would argue that the design, I mean, it does kind of approximate the design of the house, and because it's something that's not historical and kind of additive, I would almost suggest maybe it doesn't approximate the house as much, with the brick maybe in the columns, but that's just my opinion.
By the way, porte-cochere is French for gateway.
Well, thank you for looking that up, Google.
Had to know.
Catherine, just curious, how thick are the retaining walls?
What?
How thick are the retaining walls in the garage?
They're about a foot thick on each side.
I've never seen retaining walls in a garage, have you?
I have not. These were specifically constructed, they were like pre-poured and then lifted up to help support the garage and keep it in place.
For the roof or the walls?
The walls.
That was a bad way to do that.
Yes.
Seems to me. I mean, I'm not an architect.
And actually, I think the owner should be commended because they're committed to keeping that garage between that concrete wall and the retaining wall, which, provides for the steps. There's a lot of water where the backyard drains between those two.
Yeah.
They have added a yard drain that has significantly alleviated the water that runs between those walls, but it would just come pouring out of the bottom of the garage. So they're committed to keeping the garage. They use the garage. It's just that, you got to walk 10 feet up those steps to get into the backyard. I wouldn't want to carry groceries or a baby or anything else up those steps. So I think that it's reasonable to expect that somebody could have the convenience of having their car covered and out of the weather and next to their house. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask.
I mean, I think a pretty common configuration is that you have a detached garage and we don't, they don't have a covered walkway per se. It's a matter of convenience. You could still park by the house. It's not like you can't park by the house and not get your groceries in the house. So,
and pretty much all of the garages in the historic districts are set back from the house, or you have to walk anyway. So, I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel that this fits the guidelines.
Well, those side streets like Walker and Dewey have that condition frequently where the garage is in the far corner and there's quite some distance to the house. I think for for this one, that extreme difference in the grade is causing some concern.
Well, with this one, too, they also have a driveway right up next to their house.
Right, which was granted by a certificate of appropriateness. So obviously, at some point, that, you know, it was determined that a driveway was appropriate to be added.
Often when we see a need for covered parking where either they want to keep the garage because the garage is not functional, or there is no garage and they're not prepared to build a garage, we will see some kind of covered parking that is in the approximate location typical of a historic garage, like set to the back corner of the lot, or we've even, I believe, approved some that were adjacent to a remaining historic garage that they weren't using, but they put covered parking next to that, but back behind the house with the separation that the Commission was referencing. Was there any consideration of some sort of covered parking in a different location on the yard?
So we have some flexibility here. I mean, I'm not trying to say we're not going to change anything, because there were certain things in the staff report that we really found that if the Commission wanted to go in that direction, that those are simple things to correct. You know, the position of this particular structure is such that it minimizes the quantity of additional concrete, although the lot is pretty big and there's not a whole lot of concrete in the backyard. In fact, there's nothing. There's just pavers that go between the gate and the back porch. So it's not like the lot size can't accommodate additional concrete. So we were just trying to be very minimal in our approach to any new construction.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see another parking pad sticking out into the backyard, personally. It'd still be a parking car, wherever it was.
I think it's a little unusual. I mean, usually when you have a driveway, especially in the Heritage Hills District, it ends on something, some kind of a structure, and this one just kind of ends.
On the
Which I don't
property
think we
directly
normally do
across
that.
oh, sorry.
We don't normally do driveways to nowhere, do we?
Well, just a few months ago, the house directly across the street from this one applied for a driveway where there wasn't one, and so their new driveway matches the condition of this one. They have the same setup with a garage that is at street level. The house sits very high up from the garage, and they came before the Commission and asked just to put the paving in so that they could drive up to the side door of their house, you know, unload things from the car, bring in a baby, bring in a stroller, that sort of thing, and go in. They don't have a cover of any kind there.
And they also had another sample. I mean, there was another house that had that. Were they using this house?
I think they were using this house as their example.
As their
That
example.
This house had a driveway.
Linda, I
They
like
wanted
that
to do what this
driveway to
house had.
nowhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the bridge to nowhere.
And there are some really unusual side garages on side streets that are difficult.
Yep. And you do, yeah.
And that's why we offered the unique circumstances.
But that's all over the neighborhood, those side garages, without driveways up the front. And it's not an unusual site plan for those corner lots.
Right, right. Often we have,
very typical.
often at corners, we have the house facing the cross street and the driveway facing the side street. I think there's a small grouping of houses where there's also a significant grade change that makes that much more challenging, but yeah.
Well, so staff's recommending continue, but fairly clear cut in some ways. I think we would need a unique circumstance to approve it.
To me, the fact that you have a function garage and you have a driveway that leads right up to a back door, you know, I feel like that eliminates any unique circumstance per se. I mean, The only difference is whether it's covered or not. You know, that's a convenience a lot of homeowners don't have anyways with their kind of historic garage conditions.
So if the continuance is recommended, what would they do?
You know, we never recommend a denial, ever.
Yeah.
It was to give the commission an opportunity to provide feedback if there were some changes that could be made that the commission would support, if there were some alternatives that the applicant had considered, to come back and evaluate those. So as I said, if relocating some form of covered parking is something the commission would support and that the applicant would be interested in, they could come back with that, continue to make a stronger case for what they've already proposed, any of those things.
If the garage had been big enough to, or if a new garage is permitted to replace a smaller garage because it can now accommodate 2 cars, then that provides 2 cars under cover. So right now, we only have the opportunity for 1 car under cover and 1 car to be exposed. So that seems a little bit inconsistent. I would like to read some of the...
How big is the existing garage, did you say?
It's 22 feet by 22 feet on the outside. But it has, it loses about a foot on each side to the concrete walls that have been placed inside.
You know, we're speaking a lot about
20 feet clear inside.
It's not technically clear because there are other structural things going on to try and hold it up, so...
But I'm trying to think of it as a unique circumstance, so we need to...
Yes, and that's what I had offered, was that the existing garage is not physically big enough on the interior to park 2 cars at the same time.
Even though it is barely.
But we don't have any information on that garage, is that right? I mean, that seems to me a different application. I mean, that's something about the garage. We're talking about a porte-cochere on the house, right?
Well, I think if I put words in your mouth, that if it was too small to fit 2 cars, they could use an excuse to alter the garage or remove it, which we wouldn't want. So this would be sort of like a in-between.
A minimalist response to get a covered garage.
To preserve the garage and still give them 2 parking spaces somehow.
I want to clarify
I think
that
that's where you're going with
the
that.
ordinance that talks about demolishing the garage says the criteria is that it can only accommodate 1 parking space or cannot accommodate 1 parking space. It's 1 car.
Oh, 1.
When we talk about constructing a new garage, it says that a new garage may expand to accommodate 2 cars. Okay. But for the existing garage, it's 1. It doesn't say if you don't have a 450 square foot 2-car garage, you can tear it down. So I don't know that that's even applicable to the discussion, but just to get that those are 2 different sections in the code and the guidelines.
To me, it's more historical for the commission. We have argued about carports off and on forever, and we've always said no carports. And we've had this discussion with another architect about and I don't know what they called it, a car cover. I don't know. But I mean, it was the same thing. There was like, well, the same idea of that we need more cover for more cars, and we said no. And we said no then because we'd said no to other carports. It's just not something that, I mean...
However, the commission has said yes, too. So there are cases where yes has been the answer as well.
The commission has approved carports on occasion in the past. They've been very, very specifically reviewed and designed. They've worked very, very closely with staff under all those circumstances to acquire a structure that is properly placed and properly designed to be compatible with that structure.
And what
I
kind of
think the
unique
primary thing
circumstances?
right now is the acquisition of covered parking and covered transit to the house. And I think that overall throughout the historic districts, we have detached parking, and we do not have covered transition to the house. And so I don't see how that specific requirement for this property owner is unique. I think that is something that is desired throughout the district, and we have not in the past supported.
To that end, I'd like to read a couple of introductory paragraphs.
I think what Cross said is correct, though. I mean, you have a garage, and you have a driveway, and you can go from the driveway 2 feet to a covered porch. I don't see that there's the need for more cover. I don't.
Well, let me read these parts of the guidelines, which are in the front of the document, which I often bring to the commission. I think they're very important. The applicant would like to offer additional guidance from the guidelines, which has not been included in the staff report and has important points for the HP Commission to consider. Please see the following citations. I'm on page 3 of the handout. Section 1.1. The city's historic preservation ordinance acknowledges that the historic districts and landmarks are valuable assets to the city. The ordinance recognizes that change is important to the community's evolution and an indication of healthy, vital neighborhoods occupied by residents proud of their neighborhood and its history. Development and investment that preserve the historic character of Oklahoma City's historic properties and districts while also enhancing livability are encouraged. And then section 1.2. Historic preservation and historic landmark zone districts and properties are so designated to guide and not to prevent change. The municipal code establishes a process that ensures changes to HP or HL zone properties are consistent with the spirit and character of the historic district and the individual properties while meeting owners' and residents' contemporary needs.
I think what you propose does all that, but we still have our guideline that says no porte-cocheres.
That is a part of the guidelines.
I know, but we still have that other part. There's another part. So that's what we're struggling with. Yeah, it increases...
And technically, it's not a porte-cochere.
Well, Ms. Montgomery, do you think...
It's a gateway, right?
we continued it, that you... I mean, do you think there are other solutions to what the property owner is trying to get to that you can get to with the staff if we continue it today?
Originally, when the property owner came to us, they had desired to actually pull the driveway around to the back and have the structure near the back, which would, of course, take up more of the backyard, be more concrete, and be more impactful on the overall character of the site.
But it wouldn't be a porte-cochere, so can you get somewhere in the back?
If we also look at the accessory structures or accessory buildings, as Katie had pointed out, and get away from calling it a porte-cochere, we could actually go through each one of those guidelines and find that the only exception that this one has from all of the recommendations for accessory structures is its forward location. Keeping in mind that the front of the structure is 70% of the length of the building back from the front, which is more than we even require for a fence. It's going to be barely visible, but we could always extend the driveway even further so that it was behind and technically in the backyard, because that is where accessory structures are recommended to be put, although they are not required.
Katie, did we have a case where somebody had a garage, historic garage, and it wasn't adequate, so they wanted to build a new garage and turn the old one into a like a
pool house or something.
Pool house or something, like an accessory building. In other words,
right? They did.
Because we permit accessory buildings.
Yep.
So if they wanted to extend the garage and build a new garage, and say the old garage is an accessory building and it's not a garage, use it for something else, would that be possible under the guidelines?
I think there's a lot of flexibility with an accessory structure of some sort.
Yeah.
I think the main hang-up for staff was the location of it, the visibility.
I think the other is it's unfortunate, but it's a corner lot, and we have traditionally, adhered more to what has been consistent, what we've been consistent on in the guidelines, whether it's just a guideline or not, in that, we didn't let somebody do a pergola, when we're not letting people do a pergola because they have a corner lot, we are sticking to what it says, and I feel like this one is kind of the same thing. It's not, to me, it's not, the guidelines say you can't have it.
I also feel like if the garage is going to play a part, a unique circumstance or some other capacity, I think we have to have documentation of the garage, because we don't really have, any real floor plans or any real documentation of what that existing garage is besides kind of a rough outlined on the site plan. So I think at minimum, if we continue it, I think we'd need more information on the existing garage. And, you know, I don't know if maybe, and staff might inform me on this, but, you know, if there's a way to extend some kind of cover, you know, from the patio to the back corner of the house where it's not visible from the front at all, and you have somewhat of a covered walkway maybe, but it's not, you know, a big physical covered car structure. I don't know if that's an alternative.
But it's a corner lot, so you're going to be able to see it.
Seems like
But it's on the
consideration.
side.
Seems like we had another one, I think it was in Crown Heights, somebody wanted to connect the garage with a covered walkway to the house, and we didn't accept that either.
So it looks like we're going one of two ways. Continuance, work, and I guess we'll provide suggestions to see what they can do. And two, I don't think it would be approved today if you wanted to vote. So I think it would be denied.
So, continue?
So I have two specific things to look at. One is documentation of the existing garage, and the other is consider the location under the section for accessory structures,
Possible?
which would increase the impervious area. So there's drawbacks to that. It's possible that if you have more time with the 16-page document that I've put together, that your thinking might also change.
Yes, staff always loves getting documentation in advance, but I know sometimes that's hard.
It was provided,
Turn
but I don't
around,
know why.
Yeah.
The photographs were a large file size. It might have gotten stopped because of that, but I hadn't gotten a fail message.
And I think for the applicant to know, Mr. Flesky, is that right? Yes. Is this your first time in an HP district? It is. Okay.
Welcome.
Just for you to know, and Catherine will explain this to you, but just because it's continued and she looks into whatever we've suggested certainly doesn't mean that it will be approved at the next meeting. It's just another opportunity for us to explore any documentation.
All right.
So are there any other points that we should explore?
I can't think of it.
Well, I would invite you to review the additional documentation that we provided, because it'll show up next time.
Yeah, we'll double check if we got emails since we left to come over here for the meeting, and if we haven't received it, I'll let you know, and then we can forward it on to the commission.
Okay.
What I can say about that is that we have new protocol with the city that limits the amount of time, well, it extends the amount of time that it takes for documentation to enter our email boxes. It's trying to prevent viruses and that sort of thing.
I think there's one man at the Pentagon who is individually screening every attachment that comes through our email. So yes, that may be.
So if you're sending it the day of, it's very possible that it won't reach me before I get here. I'm sorry.
So do we want to continue?
Sounds like
March 6th or April 3rd?
March 6th.
Okay. Is there a motion? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, case is continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
HPCA 18-00209 at 317 Northwest 29th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of David and Peggy Silver by Alec Buriak for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct addition elective, 2, remodel northwest corner of dwelling elective, 3, construct garage elective, 4, replace paving elective, and 5, replace fence elective.
I'm David Silver.
I'm Peggy Silver. Alec had to leave. He had an emergency. He's our architect.
And I believe staff had recommended approval of everything proposed here with a few unique circumstances and one unique circumstance addressing the fence forward of 6 feet back from the front corner of the house to the east. It's a little confusing to describe, but because of the shape of these lots and the way the house next to them sits, we had some concerns about transparency of the fence related to that neighboring property. But that was the only condition identified in the staff report.
Okay.
I know you'll be surprised. I just have one question. Were the shutters, vents, and garage door, are they to be painted?
Yes.
Yes.
Matching
And what is the wood that you'll be using? Was it,
the house. It's the same wood.
Was
that
it
we have
cedar
for able
or-
to get- No, the
Oh,
house
okay.
isn't cedar.
okay, I think it was just maybe the color of the pictures.
Right, it is.
Okay.
It's
As long as those are
For
going to be,
transparency.
okay, as long as those are going to be painted,
Yeah.
I would make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
That's quick.
Or any questions?
Or any questions?
No, they're in amazement.
Good, pretty simple.
Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
No questions, okay, there's there a second. Excuse me?
Was it in Zach?
Yeah.
Oh, and I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
And second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded already. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you were quickly approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's pretty much cut and dry.
3 hours for that.
HPCA 18-00210 at 900 Northwest 38th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action
Thanks for buying
on
that out.
application of Shabazz Ahmad, Dream 405 Investments, for certificate of appropriateness to one construct addition elective. Again, on this one, I think we just had one consideration that was raised. We had some discrepancies between photos, elevation drawings, window specs that were submitted, and they did provide new documentation, I think, clarifying all of that so that it all matches.
Shabazz Ahmed, 900 Northwest 38th. I'm the applicant.
Okay, would you sign in also, please?
Yes.
I will say that that documentation just came in, I believe, yesterday, so if approved, we might leave that condition on the approval, and then staff can verify that we had everything we needed in that documentation.
Well, it looks pretty good.
I had the same question as on one of the other ones. Just windows on the long elevations is my, and that was just what you all are calling the new right elevation. Once again, it just seems like that from the side and from the neighbor, and if we could have, is there any way you could have additional windows on those elevations?
On our first elevation, before we talked to Katie, we didn't have windows on the other side either, and then she spoke about that might be an issue that comes up, so we added those two windows. I believe it's the east side of the house.
The one that says left elevation.
Left elevation,
okay.
yeah. And the existing house, it doesn't have any windows already on that side.
Okay.
And from the street view, if you look, you can't really see that part of the house either. We thought it was more important this side. It has their driveway.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's more visible, so we thought,
But the house is mid-block,
It,
right?
yes.
but it's not possible on the second story? Is that part of the new addition on the
Yeah, the second story is part of it.
back there?
Yeah.
Is there no way to put a window on that wall?
With our floor plan, no, it's not.
Well, yeah, each one has
What is it?
bathrooms, closets, kitchen,
Because we have a shower.
utility room. So anything's possible.
Might require, just looking at the bathroom closet a little bit maybe. It looks like the existing elevation did have a window next to the chimney. And then you've got that section, the new section behind that.
It's still,
It's still there.
It's still there.
Right there. On the second floor, yep.
Yeah, first and second floor.
The only thing I could see, maybe one in the closet, but, or you could put one up high in the shower.
You might lose a tiny bit of closet shelving, but I mean, it's a pretty big closet to begin with. I don't know. It would be totally imperative to add a window with the current floor plan.
Personally, I think it's okay. It's not that long of an elevation. I think they just turned off our air conditioning and heating. It's 5 o'clock. Is there a site plan?
If there's no other interest in that, and there's no questions, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Anybody?
Okay. Any questions? Or is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Your first second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, you've been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and you do know that you have some other things to hand in to staff, it looks like.
They provided us with documentation yesterday. I haven't had a chance to really carefully look through all of it, but we'll look at it, and if there was anything else that we still needed, get back to you. Those kind of matching up the windows and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, last one, last but not least.
HPCA 18-00211 at 604 Northwest 21st Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Floyd Simon, Sunbeam Arc LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct new dwelling elective and 2, install paving elective.
A lot of new houses today. Okay.
Floyd Simon, 616 Northwest 21st, owner.
Just to go summarize, staff recommended approval with just a few conditions, kind of seeing a theme with windows, on-side elevations, for the commission to consider that. Then there are some design details that were lacking in the documentation, porch railings, light fixtures, et cetera, that could potentially be submitted to staff after the fact. Some additional detail on paving, and we did not have a height comparison for this structure to the adjacent structures. This is a somewhat unusual site given the structures that they're next to with the ARC building and then the former Sunbeam Children's Home. But we do typically ask with new construction for those height comparisons and didn't ask for those this time around.
So is that a condition? Yes, it is. Okay.
And those are all up for the commission to decide if you need those things.
Yes, we need the height.
As always.
So did you all have any suggestions or whatever for the east elevation? Mr. Simon?
Are you asking me if we had any recommendations?
Oh, or changes, suggestions?
Well, the way we have it now is, I guess the best way we see the windows fitting in for the interior of the structure. I talked with the neighbor to the east, and she had no issues with less windows. There's a stairwell running through, if you're looking at the eastern elevation, from that bottom window up towards the second story on the south side. The stairwell goes from that point to the point on the second story. We could put maybe a window on the second floor, either whether it be a double or something, we could put a window there. There is a half bathroom towards the back of the first story. We could put a small window in, maybe, I don't know the size, but it would be a quarter of the size of the other ones on the first floor. And then there's a mechanical room on the back part that really wouldn't want a window there. But I talked with her about it, and she didn't, not saying she didn't want any more windows, but she was fine with less windows. And that's kind of what when we came up with it, that she would want.
Well, I could see maybe a small window in that powder room. Might be possible.
I'm in agreement.
I think we could plug one in there.
Yeah. That would be
I'd need to see exactly how big, because it is underneath the staircase, but I would assume 12 by 18 or something like that.
Would add a little bit of something. Upstairs, there's stair. Well, you could put a window into a stair.
It looks like the door would swing into where that stair is, so I assume that you could probably get a window in there. If it's big enough for a door.
Where?
For that half bath underneath the stairs.
Okay.
Mr. Simon, what is the setback on the house? What is the setback?
I believe it's 25 feet.
Does that match the houses on the other side of the street?
So
what is it done to?
The front of the porch will match where the Sunbeam Manor structure is on the other side of the arc. In the new build, the O&B is on the corner of the 621, 625, or 624?
I think it's 628.
628. It matches that, and it matches all of the ones on the 500 block of 21st. The house directly to the east of mine is about 7 or 8 feet set back because it doesn't have a porch on it. It's about 6 or 7 feet set back, but it's to the property line is where the front of this porch will be. But the existing house is where the house next door to it is. Does that make sense? Not counting the porch structure.
You're saying you're essentially matching the condition that next
Correct, but we have about one, like I said, the house next to us is set back a little further because it doesn't have a porch. The ARC building next to it is about 10 feet over the property, the building line.
But the ARC building's not a house, right?
What now?
Are you talking about the ARC building or the house on the other side of the ARC building?
So I'm talking about both of them. The one to the east is a little further back than where this porch is because it doesn't have a porch on it.
Okay.
The building to the west, which is the commercial building on the right side of the picture, is in front of the property line, probably 8 to 10 feet.
But the front wall of your house aligns with the front wall of
Yes.
this house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that
And
was my
as we
question.
move down the block, the
What about
front
the
wall of your
The
house
front
aligns
walls
with the
line up.
front wall of the addition to this building and aligns with the front wall
Yeah.
to the house at the end of the block, which is new, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Front
Actually,
porches with
correct.
or
Actually,
forward of.
the front porch on the house on the end goes a little bit further forward than ours does, actually. There's a survey on here with the red line. I think there's actually a couple one that she had, and there's also, it will go to that red build line on the survey. The porch will.
Your question about that? I was going to ask you about the brick. Is this a modular brick they're using?
The brick that we're using?
Yeah. No, it's the columns and I guess the foundation, but it doesn't say what size.
I think it's the standard Trinity size. Let me see where that is here.
It doesn't say it's modular or king size or what, but modular is more appropriate.
I would assume that's what it is. It's the standard size that Trinity Brick sells. It's their blended 77 color that we have picked out.
I've been there, and most of theirs are king size or economy.
It's not king size.
Okay.
I know that.
I'd like to see it be modular, available in that. Modular is 8-inch brick.
I guess that could be a conditional.
Yeah, I think it's more appropriate.
No, I agree.
So does this color come in that size? Is that what you're saying? It would just be
it
another
doesn't say.
size?
It just
The other
doesn't say.
size. I mean, be sure that it's that
Yeah.
size.
Right.
But you're calling the economy size. Is that what you're saying?
What now?
You're calling it
He's
the
asking for modular, and you're...
Is modular and economy the same
No.
size?
I think economy is larger, right? So it's
I can't remember which
less
one's which.
labor.
One's 10-inch. Modular is 8. I'm not sure.
Mod-
King.
Well, I think if we say modular, that's pretty standard
Yeah.
size.
Okay.
I think that,
Standard size.
I'm pretty sure that they
Historic.
sell that size as well.
So I'll make a motion with those two conditions.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve HPCA 1800211 with the conditions, let's see, with condition number 1 be that an addition of a small window on the first floor on the east side in the powder room be added unless, if it's not possible, then discuss that with staff, I guess. Condition number 2, condition number 3, condition number 4, and condition number 5 would be that the brick be, the size be modular.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, been approved.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, that's the last of our section. On to other business, none, communications and reports.
Lots of administrative approval. We can provide more information on those if people have questions.
Withdrawals.
One withdrawal, that was our case that we heard earlier, removing the application, the item to
Oh, yep,
remove the sidewalks.
revoked.
That, we don't usually see that on here, and
Yeah.
so we did want to call some attention to it. The CA was approved with the condition that they submit additional material to staff, and they never submitted the material. So the CA has now, the CA was never issued and has now expired. So we recorded that kind of in our system so that it doesn't reflect that they had a CA in case they had gone ahead and done the work that was in the CA or something like that. So you don't usually see those on your agenda, but that's what that is. Lots of appointments. You might not have known it, but we had Mary Jo and Klaus addressed on here too, that Klaus was reappointed because he was continuing Jeff's former term. Mary Jo was appointed as a historian. I would have sworn we'd already done that, but I guess not. So you are officially our historian.
Wow.
And then our two new members. So
Klaus?
Welcome.
Klaus, did you get a personal call from the mayor?
So happy to have a full house again.
Yes.
Have all our positions filled. And
Easier to get a quorum now.
yes.
People
So,
actually-
obviously to any of you at any time, call staff if you have questions, if you have feedback after the meetings, things in staff reports that aren't clear. We want to hear from you about any of those things. Nothing else to report on those other items. Board of Adjustment Planning Commission, nothing else from City Council.
Anything from municipal counselor? Okay. Then the next regular scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is March 6, 2019 at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received February 5th. New information on projects continued from today's meeting. The upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, February 12th. The next regular scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, March 13th, from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 420 West Main, Suite 900. Any items from commissioners?
Is there any updates on 50th anniversary, Katie?
Nothing really to update right now. We need to get another meeting arranged. I think we kind of...
I saw the article in our newsletter.
Yep, so I got a few things out to some of the neighborhood newsletters just to say that the commission is turning 50. I think the discussion internally was to try and consolidate all of our media blast, any events, awards, proclamation, that sort of thing, all at one time when we have everything kind of ready to go so that it gets a little more attention instead of trickling out with, oh, we did a proclamation, and then 2 months later we did another thing. And so,
Great.
But moving along.
Great, and no citizens left to be heard, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Scared me, hit the floor. Here, let me give you my card. Oh, I want you to have my card, man. You might want to buy something. and just, you know. It is 445. Don't ask me hard questions.
405?
445. 9304. Okay, listen, and don't feel like, I wasn't trying to, anytime. It's, you know, it's a favor for me